Chapter 341. After leaving Migra's hall, Duan Lingtian returned to Migra's peak, and carefully arrived at the peak of the peak before returning to the stalactite cave. Even if the cultivation environment of the stalactite cave is compared to the 9 great spirit points in the spirit point grounds, it's still much better. Even if I've become an inner court disciple now, there's no need to look for a place to cultivate on Dubhe Peak. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, then sat on the stone platform and cultivated in meditation. 9 dragons wore sovereign technique, WRM Python form. Although Duan Lingtian's current strength could be said to be invincible under the nascent soul stage. But Duan Lingtian didn't dare relax. What he had to do now was to break through to the nascent soul stage as soon as possible. Duan Lingtian walked out of the stalactite cave after cultivating all the way until dawn of the next day, then he stood on the crooked tree and bathed in the morning mist before leaping up. When he left the peak and arrived nearby the trade hall. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian noticed that at the same time these Migra's peak disciples greeted him, the gazes they looked at him with were slightly more reverence than before. What's going on? Is it because of the inner court disciple test yesterday? Duan Lingtian was still wondering when a familiar voice suddenly entered into his ears. Duan Lingtian. He Dong. Duan Lingtian looked at the person that arrived and lightly smiled. You're so early as well? The person that arrived was precisely He Dong. Now He Dong ought to be the same as him, and was also preparing to head to the Dubhe Peak Inner Court Disciple registration area to receive the Inner Court Disciple attire. Before long, the two of them stepped onto the chain bridge together. Duan Lingtian, I heard you crippled the arm of the Peak Master's foster son Wu Yongqian? Moreover, the Peak Master summoned you yesterday? The gaze He Dong looked at Duan Lingtian became even stranger. Duan Lingtian nodded. Duan Lingtian, I'm afraid all the Migra's Peak disciples are completely convinced by you now. Crippling the arm of the foster son of our Migra's Peak's master, and still being able to come out unscathed, you're absolutely the #1 person on Migra's Peak. He Dong gave Duan Lingtian a thumbs up in heartfelt admiration. Duan Lingtian's brows raised when he saw this. When he recalled the attitude of the group of Migra's Peak disciples earlier, he came to a sudden understanding. So it was because of this matter. The trade hall was located at the peak of Dubhe Peak. Duan Lingtian saw master's disciples scattered everywhere, carrying out various transactions. As Duan Lingtian's. A Lingtian Tian as Duan. 2. The gazes of some inner court disciples moved along with Duan Lingtian and He Dong. When they saw Duan Lingtian and He Dong walking towards the inner court disciple registration area, they came to a sudden understanding. Looks like these two people are the outer court disciples that passed the inner court disciple test yesterday. Suddenly, an inner court disciple seemed as if he'd discovered a new continent, and his gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian. This outer court disciple is so young he looks to be a little over 20. Could it be that he's that Duan Lingtian? Duan Lingtian? As soon as this inner court disciple finished speaking, it was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. It set off an uproar in the crowd of inner court disciples. He's Duan Lingtian? That outer court disciple Duan Lingtian that's only 20 years old and has a cultivation that stepped into the 8th level of the origin core stage? He's really as young as the rumors say. I never imagined that our 7-star sword sect would produce such an outstanding genius martial artist. His natural talent in the martial Dao is simply even more monstrous than the 5 great young masters. It's always been regretful that no one in the younger generation of our 7-star sword sect is ranked amongst the 5 great young masters. Duan Lingtian's appearance might cause the 5 great young masters to become 6 great young masters. 6 great young masters? I'm slightly anticipating it. However, although Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao isn't bad, his current strength is still limited. Perhaps he'll only be able to compete with the 5 great young masters after a few more years, or even compete with them. In next to no time, practically all the inner court disciples near the Dubhe Peak's trade hall knew that Duan Lingtian had arrived. Many inner court disciples even fought to be the first to head towards the inner court registration area, as they wanted to see this genius disciple that gave rise to much discussion in the 7-star sword sect recently. At the side of the trade hall, 2 inner court disciples stood together. Presently, one of the inner court disciples' brows were knit together, his expression was terrifyingly gloomy, and his eyes emitted dense hatred. This scene was noticed by the other inner court disciple, and the inner court disciple asked curiously, Fanjian, you have enmity with that Duan Lingtian? Big brother Lu, that Duan Ling Tian didn't just humiliate me the last time, he even severed my finger. But unfortunately he grew too quickly and I'm not a match for him now. Otherwise I'd surely teach him a good lesson. Fan Jian took a deep breath, and as he finished speaking, his tone contained slight helplessness. Fan Jian, we were friends before we entered the 7-Star Sword sect, and your family and my family are family friends. Your matter is my Lu Shiji's matter. Since that Duan Ling Tian offended you, then I'll stand up for you. The inner court disciple that spoke was a young man around the age of 28 or 29, and traces of gloominess flickered within his eyes. Thank you, big brother Lu. Fan Jian's gaze abruptly lit up, and he had a face full of joy. Duan Ling Tian and He Dong took their inner court disciple attire and were shocked when they walked out of the registration area. Presently, the registration area was surrounded by people. All of them were inner court disciples. Is Duan Ling Tian? So young. Oh my god. When I was his age, I seemed to only be at the second level of the origin core stage. Comparisons are odious. A figure that can compare with the 5 great young masters of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom in natural talent in the martial Dao has finally appeared in our 7-Star Sword sect's younger generation. Just the natural talent Duan Ling Tian has revealed so far has already completely surpassed the 5 great young masters. Duan Ling Tian was astounded when he heard the group of inner court disciples whispering in discussion. Now, he understood that the reason these inner court disciples had surrounded here was because of him. Duan Ling Tian felt extremely uncomfortable from being stared at by so many people, and he frowned before calling out to He Dong and walking out. Everywhere he passed, the inner court disciples opened up a path. Right when Duan Ling Tian intended to leave. Stop. A cold and indifferent voice that contained origin energy sounded out like a thunderclap. In the next moment, Duan Ling Tian, who'd stopped his footsteps, turned around and saw 2 inner court disciples walking towards him. He recognized one of them. It was precisely the inner court disciple, Fan Jian, that wanted to forcefully buy an infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse from the restaurant in Black Bamboo City that day. It's this Fan Jian again. Could it be that the lesson I taught him the other time wasn't enough? Duan Lingtian's face couldn't help but sink when he saw Fan Jian. 1 month ago, Fan Jian, who'd just returned to the 7-Star Sword sect, had humiliated him. Out of respect for Elder Lu Qiu, he'd only cut off an unimportant pinky of Fan Jian's as punishment. He originally thought that Fan Jian would take this as a warning, but now it would seem that his thinking was too simple. Fan Jian was just like his name. Despicable. Duan Ling Tian was able to see that when Fan Jian and the inner court disciple by his side walked over, the group of inner court disciples had surrounded them to watch the show. Senior brother Lu Shigu has enmity with this Duan Ling Tian? Probably not. According to my knowledge, Duan Ling Tian swung his sword and cut off Fan Jian's pinky 1 month ago. Senior brother Lu Shigu probably wants to stand up for Fan Jian. I've long since heard that senior brother Lu Shigu and Fan Jian have an extremely good relationship. Looks like Duan Ling Tian is going to be unlucky today. Yeah, although Duan Ling Tian is an 8th level origin core stage martial artist, senior brother Lu Shigu is a 1st level nascent soul stage martial artist. The difference between the two of them is like the difference between heaven and earth. Even if Duan Ling Tian knows the strange method of defeating a stronger opponent with a weaker opponent, I'm afraid it would be difficult for him to surmount the chasm between him and senior brother Lu Shigu. The group of inner court disciples discussed animatedly. Lu Shigu? 1st level nascent soul stage? Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the inner court disciple by Fan Jian's side and his face sank. Stand up for Fan Jian? You're Duan Ling Tian? Lu Shigu and Fan Jian walked over side by side and quickly arrived before Duan Ling Tian. Lu Shiji's brows contained slight arrogance mixed within as he looked down condescendingly at Duan Ling Tian and asked with a flat tone. However, in the next moment his expression stiffened. Only because Duan Ling Tian utterly didn't have the intention of paying attention to him. Fan Jian. Duan Ling Tian's gaze descended onto Fan Jian and his face sank slightly. That day I was willing to bury the hatchet with you out of respect for Elder Lu Qiu. What's the meaning of this today? What do I mean? With Duan Ling Tian backing him up, Fan Jian was filled with confidence, and he glared angrily at Duan Ling Tian as he sneered. Duan Ling Tian, you crippled my finger 1 month ago and I hate you in my heart. You still want me to bury the hatchet with you? Do you think it's possible? Do you think I, Fan Jian, am so magnanimous? Duan Ling Tian's eyes narrowed into a line, and a cold light flashed within. Right at this moment, a cold snort sounded out, and what followed was a burst of awe-inspiring strong wind. Whoosh! A condensed origin energy palm print suddenly whistled over and flashed straight towards Duan Lingtian. This caused Duan Lingtian, who just become vigilant in his spiritual force, to be caught off guard. At the instant Duan Lingtian reacted, the origin energy palm print had already arrived before him. His face went pale and he was utterly unable to dodge in time. Earthen Dragon Shield. He only had time to circulate his defensive martial skill and quake energy. A layer of defensive chi rose up on the surface of Duan Lingtian's body, and the defensive chi started to intensely tremble at an extremely high frequency. Bang! The condensed origin energy palm print descended onto Duan Lingtian's chest, and a terrifying strength roared out. After a short moment, it shattered Duan Lingtian's defensive chi barrier that contained quake energy. Although half of the strength contained within the origin energy palm print was resisted by the defensive chi barrier and quake energy, the remaining strength still fiercely smashed onto Duan Lingtian's chest, causing Duan Lingtian's internal organs to tremble. Pooh! Duan Lingtian felt a wave of burning pain come from his chest, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His body flew out uncontrollably like an arrow that left the bowstring, and he fiercely crashed onto the ground. Bang! Duan Lingtian's body landed on the ground, and he felt a wave of dizziness, and he only reacted after a short moment. Lu Shige. Duan Lingtian, whose face was ghastly pale, gazed at the 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes above him that were gradually dispersing, and his eyes emitted dense coldness. Chapter 342. All this happened in the blink of an eye. Including Duan Lingtian, no one had imagined that the inner court disciple Lu Shige, who was a first-level nascent soul-stage martial artist, would suddenly attack Duan Lingtian, an 8th-level origin core stage inner court disciple that had just entered the inner court, heavily injuring Duan Lingtian with a sneak attack. Duan Lingtian, are you alright? Hidong reacted to what had happened and his face went grim, then his figure flashed to arrive before Duan Lingtian as he asked with concern. I'm fine. Duan Lingtian withdrew a grade 7 gold injury pill and consumed it, then he circulated his origin energy to dissolve the medicinal strength, causing his injuries to recover slightly. He stood up with great difficulty, but his face was still pale like a sheet of paper. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath, then his gaze descended onto Lu Shige who was by Fan Jian's side, and his gaze contained frightening rage mixed within. What? You're angry? Lu Shige started laughing, then walked in large strides to arrive before Duan Lingtian, and his gaze went cold. You, a kid that has just entered the inner court, actually arrogantly to the point of directly disregarding the question of me, an inner court senior brother. Today I'll let you properly remember this, so as to prevent you from relying on your natural talent and thinking that everyone has to revolve around you. Lu Shige, right? Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Lu Shige, and a wisp of a cold and indifferent smile appeared on the corners of his mouth, and it set off the bruises on his face, causing him to seem incomparably evil. Exactly, I'm Lu Shige. Kid, I know your natural talent isn't bad, but since you've entered the inner court, you better be obedient before me, this inner court senior brother. Understand? Lu Shige had an arrogant expression. Suddenly Lu Shige waved his hand, and his origin energy skyrocketed as he once again attacked Duan Lingtian. 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes once again condensed into form above Lu Shige, whoosh. This time, the grade 7 spirit sword in Duan Lingtian's hand flashed out like a bolt of lightning as he was prepared. Sword drawing arts. Quake energy. It intended to block Lu Shige's palm strike that was swept out with origin energy raging within it. Petty tricks. In the next moment, Lu Shige's disdainful voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears, and the grade 7 spirit sword in his hand shook as the web between his thumb and forefinger trembled. Lu Shige's palm strike that contained the strength of 200 ancient mammoths completely disregarded Duan Lingtian's quake energy as it slapped away the grade 7 spirit sword and once again imprinted onto Duan Lingtian's chest. Boom. A terrifying power gushed out and entered Duan Lingtian's body. As Duan Lingtian was sent flying again, he felt extreme pain, causing Duan Lingtian's consciousness to begin to blur. Before he fainted, Duan Lingtian heard two voices in his ears. Duan Lingtian. One of them was Hidong's voice. Stop. The other voice sounded familiar, but Duan Lingtian couldn't recall who it was. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian completely lost consciousness. When Duan Lingtian recovered his consciousness and opened his eyes, he noticed that he was lying on a soft bed. So painful. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian felt a wave of pain come from his chest. When he looked within himself, He noticed that the injuries of his internal organs had already completely recovered, and his shattered sternum had almost healed as well. A grade 7 gold injury pill doesn't have such medicinal strength. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked. He who possessed the lifetime worth of memories of the Emperor Wu of Samsara was extremely knowledgeable towards grade 7 gold injury pills. With his injuries, even if he consumed a grade 7 gold injury pill, it would be impossible for him to recover to such an extent without a few months of time. Duan Lingtian naturally wouldn't think that he'd been lying there for a few months. It's a grade 6 great recovery pill. In next to no time, Duan Lingtian noticed a trace of medicinal strength that remained in his body, and it was the medicinal strength of a grade 6 great recovery pill. What's this place? After returning to his senses, Duan Lingtian sized up this tidy room. There weren't many decorations in the room, but there were all sorts of practical furniture. Suddenly, seeming to have noticed something, Duan Lingtian's gaze focused. Spirit point? This is a spirit point? Duan Lingtian noticed the rhythm of the origin energy in his body, and the feeling this place gave him was exactly the same as the feeling he had when he was in Mizar Hall and Migres Hall. Mizar Hall and Migres Hall were both located on the spirit point of the 7-star sword sect's main peak, Dubhe Peak. The cultivation environment was extremely good. Lu Shirgu. As he recalled the scene before he lost consciousness, Duan Lingtian's eyes emitted a frightening cold light, and killing intent arose within his heart. Lu Shirgu relied on the fact that he was a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist to attack him twice, and the ruthlessness of his attacks caused one to shudder with fear. I'll return it to you double. Traces of coldness arose within Duan Lingtian's heart, and he made a ghastly vow. What exactly is this place? Suppressing the flames of rage in his heart, Duan Lingtian got off the bed and opened the door. You're awake. Right at this moment, a familiar voice sounded out from nearby. Duan Lingtian looked over, and at the end of the right side of the corridor outside his room was a spacious pavilion, and a middle-aged man was standing with his back facing him. Although the middle-aged man didn't turn around, he seemed to be able to notice Duan Lingtian's movements. Peak Master. Duan Lingtian left his room and walked up the pavilion, then greeted the middle-aged man that had his back facing him. I heard songs say that you were injured by a first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. You have enmity with him? The middle-aged man turned around and revealed his true appearance. It was precisely the peak master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. And the place Duan Lingtian was currently at was precisely Mizar Hall, one of the 9 great spirit points of the 7-star sword sect's Dubhe Peak. So it was senior brother Zheng Song that saved me. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart. He recalled it now. No wonder he felt that the other voice he heard before he fainted was slightly familiar. So it turned out that the owner of that voice was precisely the son of the peak master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Song. I don't have enmity with him, but I have some conflict with another inner court disciple by his side. But after today the enmity between me and him isn't shallow. As Duan Lingtian finished speaking, traces of cold lights flashed within his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a ghastly sneer. He would make Lu Shirgu return double what Lu Shirgu gave him. Peak Master, it was you who gave me a grade 6 great recovery pill? Duan Lingtian, who calmed his feelings, looked at Zheng Fan and asked. Zheng Fan nodded. I noticed that your injuries weren't light, and if you only consumed a grade 7 gold injury pill, even if you were able to recover completely, it would probably be a matter of a few months. So I gave you a grade 6 great recovery pill to allow your injuries to recover in a short period of time. Duan Lingtian will remember Peak Master's kindness in gifting me the pill. Duan Lingtian spoke with a serious expression. Compared to the huge favor you've given me, a single grade 6 great recovery pill is nothing. Zheng Fan shook his head and smiled, then sat down at the nearby table and started fiddling with the tea set. You've been unconscious for a few hours as well and have just awoken. I presume your spirit is weak as well. Drink 2 cups of soaring cloud tea with me and recover your spirit as soon as possible. Thank you, Peak Master. Duan Lingtian sat down and glanced at the horizon. Presently, the scorching sun hung high in the sky, and it was already noon. Zheng Fan poured a cup of soaring cloud tea for Duan Lingtian, then asked with a light smile. Duan Lingtian, what plans do you have in the future? Duan Lingtian sipped a mouthful of soaring cloud tea, and his spirit was refreshed as he slowly said, I don't have any specific plans for now. But in the future, I ought to head to the foreign lands to take a look. Foreign lands? Zheng Fan shuddered when he heard Duan Lingtian, and the teacup in his hand almost fell to the ground. Zheng Fan shook his head and sighed with emotion. Duan Lingtian, I truly never imagined that your ambition was so great. Even I haven't thought about the foreign lands for now. Supposedly, even an existence at the void initiation stage like me is nothing in the foreign lands. It's even to the extent that experts at the void interpretation stage can be seen everywhere. Supposedly, there are even many existences at the void transformation stage in the central area of the foreign lands. As he finished speaking, Zheng Fan had a slight lingering fear in his heart. The experts in the foreign lands were as numerous as the clouds, and it also meant that every step was filled with killing intent. Without a certain level of strength, one would utterly not dare wander about the foreign lands. Peak Master, sometimes, if your goal is set slightly further, then you might be able to walk even further on the path of the martial Tao. Otherwise, wouldn't it be too late to realize that you're only a frog at the bottom of a well when you're at the end of your life? Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, and he didn't mind. In the eyes of others, perhaps the foreign lands was like a scourge or a ferocious beast. But in the eyes of Duan Lingtian, who'd fused with the memories of Emperor Wu of Samsara, it was instead an even vaster world, in the foreign lands. Void prying stage martial artists were everywhere, and void initiation stage martial artists were as numerous as dogs. If your goal is set slightly further, then you might be able to walk even further on the path of the martial Tao. A frog at the bottom of a well? Zheng Fan went silent when he heard Duan Lingtian. After a long time, Zheng Fan returned to his senses, and he looked at Duan Lingtian and sighed with emotion. Duan Lingtian, I've still underestimated you. No wonder you possess such accomplishments at such an age. Your martial Tao will, your heart of an expert, even I, the peak master of the 7-star sword sex Mizar Peak, am ashamed of my inferiority. I'm slightly anticipating now. What heights will you attain in another 10 years? I can be sure of one thing, your strength at that time will surely be stronger than me. Zheng Fan spoke very favorably of Duan Lingtian. Peak Master, you're too kind. Duan Lingtian smiled lightly, but his eyes revealed a wisp of confidence. In another 10 years? At that time he might already be wandering in the foreign lands. After drinking a few cups of soaring cloud tea, Duan Lingtian stood up and lightly smiled to Zheng Fan. Peak Master, if you have other matters, then I'll be returning first. Please help me thank senior brother Zheng Song on his behalf. I, Duan Lingtian, will remember this favor. Zheng Fan nodded. Go on. Duan Lingtian turned around and borrowed force from the side of the pavilion to descend onto the vast platform outside Mizar Hall, and then his figure flashed out to flash off into the distance. Perhaps, my greatest accomplishment in this lifetime is being on good terms with this little fellow. Zheng Fan sighed as he gazed at the figure of Duan Lingtian. He only returned to his senses when Duan Lingtian's figure vanished before his eyes, and he shook his head and smiled. So long as he's able to grow up safely, then his future isn't something I can imagine. This good karma is even able to allow me to enjoy it for my entire lifetime. Many years later, Zheng Fan would realize it. Chapter 343. After Duan Lingtian left Mizar Hall, he headed down Dubhe Peak. His eyes seemed calm but actually concealed killing intent. Lu Shirgu. Suddenly Duan Lingtian's face went gloomy, as if it was covered in a layer of thin ice, and the cold air was oppressive. He deeply remembered this name in his heart. Although he could invite Lu Shirgu to battle on the life and death arena, and use offensive inscriptions to directly kill Lu Shirgu. But Duan Lingtian didn't want to do this. Inscriptions, in a certain sense, were equivalent to a cheating device. Using inscriptions to kill Lu Shirgu was easy, but it was difficult to dispel the hatred in his heart. He wanted to use the strength that truly belonged to him to destroy Lu Shirji's confidence, and make Lu Shirgu repent for his actions today. This was his pride. Crawl up from where he fell. This was a man, a true man. After Duan Lingtian left Dubhe Peak, he directly returned to Migres Peak, and carefully circled around for half an hour before returning to the stalactite cave at the side of the peak. Calmly cultivating. During these 2 months of time, Duan Lingtian cultivated in the stalactite cave. When he was hungry he would directly roast meat to eat, and when he was full he would continue cultivating, not giving up day or night. Time flew by like a white steed flashing by a crack. 2 months of time, it wasn't long but it wasn't short either, and it passed just like that. 2 months later. Duan Lingtian left the stalactite cave and spent a day to prepare everything that needed to be prepared before heading to Alcade Peak. Elder Bai. When Duan Lingtian went to look for Li Fei, Elder Bai just happened to be there as well. Scoundrel. When Li Fei heard Duan Lingtian's voice, she walked out of the wooden house with a face full of joy. Elder Bai nodded to Duanling Tian. Fei has told me everything that needs to be said. I want you to guarantee that when you return, Fei will be completely unharmed. Otherwise, I won't let you off. As she finished speaking, Elder Bai's gaze became fierce. Duanling Tian did not get angry. He knew that Elder Bai was also concerned about Li Fei, so he smiled faintly. Rest assured, Elder Bai, you know the relationship between little Fei and me. Unless I die, I will not let her suffer any harm. Only then did Elder Bai nod her head in satisfaction before directly leaving. Scoundrel, don't mind Master's words. After Elder Bai left, Li Fei smiled apologetically at Duanling Tian. Little Fei, is that how you look at your man? Not to mention that Elder Bai is your master. Just the words Elder Bai said earlier were because she was concerned about you. She's so good to you, I'm more than happy. Why would I mind? Duanling Tian shook his head and smiled. Are you ready? Yes. Li Fei nodded excitedly, and when she thought of how she was about to leave the Seven-Star Sword sect, she felt a wave of happiness in her heart. So we're leaving now? Do we need to inform Senior Sisters Wuqing? Duanling Tian asked. He'd come to Alcade Peak precisely for the sake of taking Li Fei and leaving with her. I've told Senior Sister. Li Fei lightly shook her head, then said, I wonder if little sister Kerr has returned yet. Let's go take a look at Alcade Hall? Alcade Hall, the cultivation place of the Alcade Peak's master on the main peak, Dubhe Peak. As the personal disciple of the Alcade Peak's master, Kerr usually cultivated there. There's no need. Duanling Tian laughed bitterly as he shook his head. I went to Dubhe Peak yesterday and went to Alcade Hall on the way. Kerr and her master haven't returned yet. I wonder where they went. They haven't returned after so long. As he finished speaking, Duanling Tian was slightly worried. Noticing that Duanling Tian was worried about Kerr, Li Fei consoled. Don't worry. According to Master, the Peak Master of our Alcade Peak is a Void Initiation Stage expert, and with her by Kerr's side, nothing will happen to Kerr. Yes. Duanling Tian nodded. With the protection of a Void Initiation Stage expert, there were very few people in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom that were capable of threatening Kerr's safety. Let's go. Duanling Tian called out to Li Fei, then directly left Alcade Peak. As they walked on the chain bridge, Li Fei laughed. Scoundrel, I saw the gazes of the group of Alcade Peak sisters earlier as if they wished for nothing more than to eat you up. Besides that, many senior sisters used gazes of envy and jealousy to look at me. As she finished speaking, Li Fei seemed to be slightly complacent, and she held on to Duanling Tian's arm as a smile that could turn the world upside down appeared on her face. Duanling Tian laughed bitterly. Little Fei, didn't you like to be jealous in the past? You're not jealous now? What's there to be jealous about? Li Fei laughed. There's nothing between you and them. Moreover, my man being so popular also shows that I have good taste. You have good taste. Duanling Tian muttered to himself when he heard Li Fei. At that time, it seemed that it was I who took the initiative to pursue you. Scoundrel, what did you say? Li Fei heard Duanling Tian muttering to himself, and she stared at Duanling Tian with a spurious smile. No, nothing. Duanling Tian hurriedly shook his head, as he'd already felt Li Fei's hand on his waist. He didn't doubt in the slightest that if he dared speak carelessly, his waist would immediately suffer extreme devastation. After Duanling Tian and Li Fei arrived at Dubhe Peak, they headed down the mountain. All along the way, the Seven-Star Sword Sect disciples that saw Duanling Tian and Li Fei all looked at them with gazes that were filled with envy and jealousy. The male disciples were filled with envy and jealousy towards Duanling Tian. The female disciples were instead filled with envy and jealousy towards Li Fei. In next to no time, Duanling Tian and Li Fei arrived at the stable near the entrance of the sect, and they intended to go get their horses. Senior brother Duanling Tian. Duanling Tian and Li Fei had only just walked into the stable when a figure nimbly dashed over and stopped before Duanling Tian with an excited expression. Moyo. Duanling Tian nodded and smiled to the outer court disciple that was similar in age to him. Senior brother Duanling Tian, this is? Mou had an excited expression when he saw that Duanling Tian was still able to remember him. In next to no time, his gaze descended onto Li Fei, and he was stunned for a moment before withdrawing his shocked gaze and didn't dare look any longer. He discerned that this was senior brother Duanling Tian's woman. This is my woman, you can call her senior sister Li Fei. Duanling Tian nodded and smiled to Mou, then he introduced to Li Fei. Little Fei, this is Mou, our Fergana horse. He's been taking care of it during this period of time. Mou, you haven't slacked off recently, right? As he finished speaking, Duan Tian looked at Mou. Don't worry senior brother Duan Tian, I've taken your and senior sister Li Fei's Fergana horse out for a walk practically every day this past month, and it's become much sturdier. Mou laughed mischievously. Li Fei lightly smiled at Mou, causing Mou to be stunned for a moment. When had he ever seen such an outstanding beauty? Only when Duan Tian lightly coughed did Mou come back to his senses. His face flushed red, and his shy appearance caused Duan Tian and Li Fei to be unable to refrain from laughing. Soon, Duan Tian and Li Fei saw their Fergana horse, and it was indeed much sturdier than before. The two of them flipped over and mounted their horses, nodding and smiling at Mou before riding off. Only an outstanding genius martial artist like senior brother Duan Tian is worthy of a drop-dead gorgeous beauty like senior sister Li Fei. Mou's gaze gradually became firm as he gazed at Duan Tian and Li Fei's figures that galloped off into the distance, and he silently said to himself, Mou, you have to work hard as well. Senior brother Duan Tian is the target you strive for. You don't have to be as outstanding as senior brother Duan Tian, but even if you're only half as outstanding as senior brother Duan Tian, you wouldn't have lived your life in vain. At this moment, Mou's martial Dao was unprecedentedly tough. In the future, when Mou became successful and made a name for himself, the person he was most grateful to in his heart was still that senior brother Duan Tian that was like a bright lamp in the night that led the way for him. This was something that even Duan Tian himself didn't expect. He didn't do anything, yet he'd affected the life of an outer court disciple that acted as a cart driver. Within the Seven-Star Sword sect, a figure that dashed like the wind was incomparably swift as it passed through the sect gate and flashed out. His target was the two Fergana horses that were galloping off in the distance. His target was obviously the people on the Fergana horses. Void prying stage expert? The Seven-Star Sword sect disciple that guarded the sect gate looked at the 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that flashed out in the sky above the figure that flashed out and was stunned. Isn't this the symbol of a first-level void prying stage expert? I've finally found a chance. Duan Tian, let me see how you escape from my grasp this time. The laughter of the person that dashed out was filled with excitement and willfulness. At the same time, nearby the Dubhe Peak test platform, another figure flashed out and his target was the foot of Dubhe Peak. In the sky above this figure, 200 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form, first level of the nascent soul stage. Right at this moment, an even swifter figure flashed out, and in the blink of an eye, it surpassed the former and blocked the former's path. At the same time that this person dashed out, 300 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared in the sky above him. Second level of the nascent soul stage. The former's figure stopped moving, and after he focused his eyes to look clearly at the person that blocked his path, his face sank. Zheng Song, it's you again. I didn't fuss about it with you the last time when you took away that Duan Tian, but why are you blocking my path today? Lu Shirgu, are you mistaken? How did I block your path? This is Dubhe Peak, the place of the Seven-Star Sword sect, and not your home. I can walk however I like. What does it have to do with you? Zheng Song looked at the person before him and smiled indifferently. Zheng Song, must you make it difficult for me? Lu Shirji's face sank as he knew clearly in his heart that this Zheng Song had probably already known of his objective. Otherwise Zheng Song wouldn't block his path. He'd waited for 2 months and finally found such a good opportunity to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Now, his heart was filled with grievance when he saw it was about to be destroyed by Zheng Song. At that time, when he humiliated that Duan Tian, it was only for the sake of standing up for Fan Jian. Later on, with a quick thought, when he thought of Duan Tian's peerlessly monstrous natural talent, the intention to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots was born in his heart. Since that time he'd always been looking for an opportunity. Today he'd finally received the news of Duan Tian leaving the Seven-Star Sword sect with great difficulty, and he didn't dare stay for a moment before flashing down Dubhe Peak, only for the sake of catching up to Duan Tian and killing Duan Tian to put an end to future troubles. Chapter 344. Make things difficult for you? Zheng Song couldn't help but laugh when he heard Lu Shirgu, and he glanced indifferently at Lu Shirgu. Lu Shirgu, you seem to think too highly of yourself, right? You think you're worthy? Lu Shirgu took a deep breath and slowly suppressed the flames of rage in his heart. The person before him was far from something Duan Tian could compare to, not to mention Zheng Song's own strength was much stronger than him. On the other hand, Zheng Song's father was the peak master of the Seven-Star Sword sect's Mizar Peak, and was an existence that he and the clan behind him couldn't afford to offend. Since you're not making things difficult for me, then it couldn't be any better. Lu Shiji's figure flashed, wanting to go around Zheng Song and head down W Peak. Unexpectedly, Zheng Song's figure flashed and followed him like a shadow, causing him to be unable to move an inch. Zheng Song, don't go too far. Finally, Lu Shigu couldn't endure it any longer, and his eyes squinted as he glared angrily at Zheng Song. He wasn't willing to miss the opportunity to kill Duan Lingtian this time. Once he missed this opportunity, he didn't know when he would be able to find such a good opportunity next time. With Duan Lingtian's natural talent in the martial Dao, when Duan Lingtian matured in the future, surpassing him was only a matter of time. He could imagine that once Duan Lingtian matured to surpass him, Duan Lingtian would surely look for him to take revenge. At that time he would be completely in a passive position. So, he must kill Duan Lingtian before Duan Lingtian matured, because only in this way would he be able to eliminate all future troubles and allow himself to have no worries. What? Lu Shigu, you still want to fight me? Zheng Song's eyes squinted as he stared at Lu Shigu with a spurious smile, and he had a calm expression. From the beginning until the end, he seemed as if he utterly didn't take Lu Shigu seriously. Zheng Song, Lu Shigu will remember what happened today. When he realized that it was impossible for him to catch up to Duan Lingtian and eliminate him by the roots, Lu Shigu gritted his teeth and left behind a ruthless sentence before turning around and heading up W Peak. The corners of Zheng Song's mouth curled into a wisp of disdain as he gazed at Lu Shiji's figure that disappeared into the distance. Outside the Seven-Star Sword Sect, in the direction of Black Bamboo City. Whoosh! The figure that ran like the wind seemed to have transformed into a hurricane as it swept towards the two Fergana horses that were running at full speed in the distance. This person that was swiftly moving forward was a middle-aged man, and as he dashed forward, 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes condensed into form in the sky above him. His cultivation was on the verge of being revealed. The first level of the void prying stage. Seeing the two Fergana horses drawing closer and closer, the middle-aged man's lips curled into a complacent smile as a fanatical look appeared in his eyes. The muscle tendon changing and marrow cleansing scroll is mine. However, in the next moment, the smile on the middle-aged man's face froze. This was because an even faster gust of wind had reached his ears. Before he could react, he discovered a figure had passed him in the blink of an eye. The figure stopped and stood in the distance. Although the middle-aged man was shocked by this person's cultivation, he had no intention of paying attention to him. His figure flashed as he prepared to go around this person. Zhao Lin. Right at this moment, a voice that was like a thunderclap mixed with thick origin energy pierced into Zhao Lin's ears, causing the vital energy and blood in Zhao Lin's body to roil, and he didn't dare continue dashing forward. After Zhao Lin stopped, he took a deep breath, and only then did he ease up the shaking of his internal organs slightly. Zhao Lin looked at the person that had his back facing him in astonishment. Who are you? Finally, the person that had his back facing Zhao Lin slowly turned around and revealed his true appearance. It's you. Zhao Lin's face went grim when he saw the lineup of the people that had arrived, as he never imagined that the person that stopped him would be this person. The Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Peak Master Zheng Fan, what's the meaning of this? Zhao Lin's face sank, and his words contained a questioning tone mixed within. Zhao Lin, the Migres Peak Outer Court Elder, wasn't afraid in the slightest when facing the Peak Master of Mizar Peak, Zheng Fan. Elder Zhao Lin, please return. Zheng Fan glanced at Zhao Lin calmly as he slowly spoke. Zheng Fan, you're insisting on interfering in my matters? Zhao Lin looked at Zheng Fan and directly called out his name. A fierce light flickered within his eyes as he said in a low voice. Zheng Fan, don't forget who my grandfather is. Zheng Fan couldn't help but laugh when he heard Zhao Lin. Elder Zhao Lin, I'm extremely curious. You dare tell Elder Ming about your current actions? You. Zhao Lin's face went grim as if Zheng Fan had grabbed onto his sore spot, and he was slightly enraged from embarrassment. Elder Zhao Lin, please. Zheng Fan glanced at the direction of W Peak and slowly spoke. Zhao Lin's gaze shot into the distance, and the two Fergana horses had already completely vanished from his field of vision. He knew clearly in his heart. Now, not to mention Zheng Fan interfering in this matter, even if Zheng Fan didn't exist, he might not be able to catch up to his target. Zhao Lin coldly swept Zheng Fan with his gaze, then turned around and headed towards the direction of the Seven-Star Sword Sect's main peak, W Peak. Zheng Fan followed up, and flowing lights flashed within his eyes. His thoughts seemed to have returned to yesterday, Peak Master, I have something I need your help with. Speak, so long as it's within my ability, I'll absolutely not refuse. I intend to leave the 7-star sword sect tomorrow, but I'm worried that someone will harm me, so I hope that Peak Master can help me leave safely. Duan Tian owes Peak Master's favor. It's only a small matter, I promise you. Thank you, Peak Master. Flowing lights flashed within Zheng Fan's eyes, and his heart was filled with bewilderment. How exactly did that little fellow offend Zhao Lin? Zhao Lin was only a first-level Void Prying Stage Outer Court Elder, and he didn't take him seriously. However, even if he'd already broken through to the Void Initiation stage now, he still felt reverence and fear towards the person behind Zhao Lin. Giddy up! Giddy up! Duan Tian and Li Fei spurred the Fergana horses to travel side by side, and they quickly arrived at Black Bamboo City and converged with Xiong Quan. After changing into casual clothes, they prepared to head to the Solitary Peak. The Solitary Peak was extremely far away from the 7-star sword sect. This time, Duan Tian had made preparations to go on a long journey. According to what Xiong Quan said, it would take almost 5 months to depart from here and arrive at the Solitary Peak. In other words, a round trip would take almost a year's time. Of course, this was only Xiong Quan's estimation of the time. When Duan Tian's group of 3 spurred their horses to gallop madly, eating wind and drinking dew all along the way, it had only been almost 4 months when they arrived near the Solitary Peak. Xiong Quan, how far is the Solitary Peak from here? After traveling for 4 months, Duan Tian's entire body was covered in dust, and slight exhaustion was mixed between his brows. During these past 4 months he hadn't rested properly. He cultivated as he traveled. When the Fergana horse galloped, not only was its speed swift, it was extremely steady. So, while they traveled, it didn't affect Duan Tian's cultivation. Young master, we're almost there, at most we'll be able to travel for another half a day. Xiong Quan glanced at the surroundings as he spoke slowly. Although Xiong Quan had traveled for 4 months as well, he was still in high spirits. This was completely different from Duan Tian. Of course, all of this was because Xiong Quan's cultivation was profound. Moreover, during the journey, Xiong Quan's cultivation that had already recovered to the 6th level of the Void Prying stage had broken through once more, and he'd officially stepped into the ranks of the 7th level of the Void Prying stage. Duan Tian nodded, then looked at Li Fei who was beside him and said with a light smile, "Little Fei, endure a little longer. We'll be able to rest very soon." "Scoundrel, I'm fine." Li Fei nodded with a strong expression, causing Duan Tian's heart to ache slightly, and he even slightly regretted bringing Li Fei along. During these past 4 months, although the bandits they encountered on the way were all killed by Xiong Quan, and they didn't have to worry about it. But because of the lack of rest, the accumulation of fatigue over a long period of time had caused Duan Tian and Li Fei to be both physically and mentally exhausted. Fortunately, Li Fei's cultivation had broken through on the way, otherwise she might not have been able to persist until now. Li Fei's cultivation had broken through, and Duan Tian's cultivation had broken through as well. All along the way, Duan Tian's cultivation had smoothly broken through to the 8th level of the Origin Core stage after traveling day and night and cultivating without stopping. Even if I don't use a spirit weapon now, my strength is comparable to the strength of 121 ancient mammoths, and I'm already stronger than an ordinary 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist. An ordinary 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist only has the strength of 120 ancient mammoths. At the same time that they continued on their way, Duan Tian thought in his heart. Besides that, along with my breakthrough to the 8th level of the Origin Core stage, the quake energy broke through once more. Presently, the scope of effect of the quake energy has increased to the strength of 70 ancient mammoths. When he thought up to here, Duan Tian felt a wave of excitement. However, the current me is still inferior to that Lu Shirgo. In next to no time, the excitement on Duan Tian's face vanished without a trace, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him, and his eyes flickered with an icy cold sheen. Lu Shirgo. A first-level nascent soul stage inner court disciple. Exerting his full strength, his strength was comparable to the strength of 200 ancient mammoths. If he were to utilize a spirit sword, his strength would be even stronger. "Scoundrel, what are you thinking about?" Suddenly, Li Fei's pleasant voice sounded out, causing Duan Tian to return to his senses. "It's nothing." Duan Tian shook his head and smiled, and the icy coldness in his eyes instantly vanished without a trace. He didn't tell Li Fei about the matter of Li Fei as he was afraid that Li Fei would be worried. Duan Tian's group of 3 hurried on for another half a day. Only when the sun set in the west did they see the precipitous mountain peak in the distance that was like a pillar that held up the sky. This mountain peak shot straight into the clouds, and with a glance, it caused one to be unable to refrain from being shocked. "Young master, that mountain peak is the Hermit Peak," Xiong Quan said to Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded, and his gaze slightly moved down to descend into the distance. In the distance, a vast, majestic and ancient city rose from the ground in the desert, and it was like an enormous beast that lay dormant there, causing one's heart to be awed. "Xiong Quan, what city is this?" Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Li Fei's beautiful eyes slightly moved, and her gaze descended onto the distant ancient city along with Xiong Quan. "Young master, this is the ancient city of Everlast." Chapter 345. Ancient City of Everlast? Duan Lingtian's gaze shone as he gazed at the endless stream of carriages outside the ancient city, and he asked curiously, "I see that this ancient city is rather bustling, is there anything special about it?" An ancient city that stood in the middle of a desert, an ancient city that was close to the solitary peak, was actually able to attract so many merchant groups, and this caused Duan Lingtian's heart to be filled with curiosity. "Young master, the ancient city of Everlast can be said to be the largest trade city in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Within this city, all the businesses are born for the sake of profit. Unlike ordinary cities, there aren't houses that are specially provided for people to stay in. If one isn't doing business here, then one can only stay in the inns within the city if one wants to stay here." Xiong Quan continued. "The largest trade city in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom?" Duan Lingtian was slightly in disbelief. How could a city that stood in this godforsaken place have such a great background? "Young master, there's a saying that has always been circulated in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. If you want to obtain something you want, then if the ancient city of Everlast doesn't have it, then it's even more impossible to encounter it anywhere else in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom." Xiong Quan spoke slowly. "Hearing you say this, I'm interested in this city. Tonight, we'll find an inn here to stay for the night and properly experience the local conditions and customs of this city, then we'll go to the solitary peak another day." Since they'd finally come out, Duan Lingtian intended to bring Li Fei to properly take a stroll around the city, as he couldn't directly return after finishing what he had to do. In that way it would be too uninteresting. Li Fei's beautiful eyes shone when she heard Duan Lingtian, and just like Duan Lingtian, she was filled with curiosity and yearning towards this ancient city. "Young master." When they were about to enter the ancient city, Xiong Quan reminded Duan Lingtian, "Experts are as numerous as the clouds in the ancient city of Everlast. Even an inconspicuous passerby is extremely likely to be a void stage expert. Coupled with the fact that this place is far away, and it's a no-man's land and bloody slaughters frequently occur here. Martial artists without a certain strength can only tuck their tails between their legs in the ancient city of everlasting desolation, as they are afraid of getting into trouble." Duan Lingtian nodded, his expression turning solemn. This ancient city of Everlast couldn't be viewed with the same gaze as an ordinary city. When they were near the ancient city of Everlast, Li Fei took out her veil and put it on before entering the ancient city with Duan Lingtian and Xiong Quan. As soon as they entered the ancient city, they could feel a strong aura of the market. On the main road of the ancient city, there was an endless stream of carriages and horses. It was very lively. Many stalls were set up on both sides of the road. These stalls were either selling medicinal pills, spirit artifacts, or all sorts of materials. There were young men, middle-aged men, and old men among the stall owners. Duan Lingtian urged his horse forward as he extended his spiritual power. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. His gaze fell on the owner of a nearby roadside stall. This was an old man with a hunched back, and he was standing behind the stall and bargaining with someone. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime experience of Samsara Emperor Wu, Duan Lingtian was able to confirm that this old man with a hunched back was a void-prying stage martial artist, and his strength ought to be at the second level of the void-prying stage. Looks like what Xiong Quan said earlier wasn't false in the slightest. Any random passerby in the ancient city of everlasting desolation might be a void stage expert. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath and became slightly vigilant. "Scoundrel, how about we stay in that inn? Look, there's even a restaurant opposite the inn." When they passed by a corner, the gaze of the sharp-eyed Li Fei abruptly shone as she looked towards the distance. Duan Lingtian followed along Li Fei's gaze when he heard this. An ancient-looking inn appeared before his eyes. Beside the inn was a restaurant that silently stood there for a long time. This restaurant was extremely special, quiet and elegant. The first floor of the restaurant was empty, and it was filled with various plants that were placed in a ring shape, causing one to feel extremely comfortable when looking at it. At the center of these plants was the staircase that led to the second floor. The structure of this restaurant caused Duan Lingtian's eyes to light up. Duan Lingtian spurred his horse forward and brought along Li Fei and Xiong Quan to quickly pass by the restaurant. Eternal Jade Restaurant? Duan Lingtian's gaze was sharp, and he saw the signboard of this restaurant with a single glance. Scoundrel, this restaurant is so quiet. Li Fei glanced at the second floor of the restaurant in surprise. There were many customers sitting on the second floor, either sipping tea, drinking wine, eating, or chatting. But all of them intentionally lowered their voices and didn't affect the others. Such an atmosphere appearing in a restaurant caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but reveal a surprised expression. It really is a strange restaurant. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, then looked at the inn opposite the restaurant. Let's stay in this inn first, then we'll come out to eat. Xianqi Inn. Duan Lingtian glanced at the inn signboard, then spurred his horse forward and arrived at the entrance of the inn. Immediately, 3 of the manservants standing in a row at the entrance of the inn came forward and respectfully took the reins of the Fergana horse from Duan Lingtian and the other 2, then led the Fergana horse down. Duan Lingtian and the other 2 walked into the inn, and the counter of the inn was right in front of them. Behind the counter stood a woman around the age of 27 or 28. When Duan Lingtian saw the woman for the first time, he couldn't help but stare blankly. Only when Li Fei's hand twisted around his waist did he return to his senses. Although this woman's appearance wasn't comparable to Li Fei's, it wasn't much worse. But for some reason, there seemed to be a trace of charm between the woman's brows, causing people to easily get lost in it. Charm technique? After Duan Lingtian awoke from his stupor, his mood surged. Within the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, there were records of charm techniques. Charm techniques were a cultivation technique that women cultivated. Once it was cultivated to the mastery stage, it was capable of causing men to get lost in it and be at their mercy. Amongst Duan Lingtian and the other 2, only Duan Lingtian was affected by the charm technique of the woman behind the counter. Xiong Quan's cultivation was profound, his gaze was clear and he remained unmoved. As for Li Fei, she was a woman herself, so she naturally wouldn't be charmed by a woman. Innkeeper. Duan Lingtian understood that this woman ought to be the innkeeper of this Xianqi Inn, so he came before the counter and called out. But the woman that was leaning on the counter and holding her fragrant cheeks seemed as if she hadn't heard Duan Lingtian at all, and her pair of eyes that were like jade waves stared straight outside the inn. Duan Lingtian followed the woman's gaze and looked over. He noticed that the woman's gaze had descended onto a slovenly young man by the window on the second floor of the opposite inn. This slovenly young man was around 30 years old, his face was covered in stubble, and his hair was carelessly draped over his shoulders. He was slovenly in appearance, and he held a wine gourd in his hand as he leaned against the window and drank wine. Suddenly Duan Lingtian noticed that the slovenly young man seemed to have noticed his gaze, and the young man turned around and nodded with a smile towards Duan Lingtian. Although the slovenly young man turned around right away, Duan Lingtian still saw his appearance clearly. This was a handsome young man with slanted brows and starry eyes. His square face that was covered in stubble was filled with vitality, and his pair of eyes that contained the vicissitudes of life seemed to be telling of the countless vicissitudes he'd experienced in the past. This is a person with a story. Duan Lingtian couldn't help but have this thought in his heart. Alas, he's unwilling to look at me in the end? Suddenly, a sigh sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Only now did he notice that the beautiful innkeeper behind the counter had already recovered from her shock and was muttering to herself. Him? Duan Lingtian had a strange look in his eyes. The him that the beautiful innkeeper was talking about couldn't be the slovenly young man drinking on the second floor of the opposite restaurant, right? The 3 of you want to stay? Finally, the beautiful innkeeper raised her head and looked at Duan Lingtian and the other 2 as she asked. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. How many rooms do you want? The beautiful innkeeper asked. 2. Duan Lingtian said. Soon, the beautiful innkeeper took out 2 keys and handed them to Duan Lingtian. Sky Room 1, Sky Room 2. The room fee is waived. You can stay as long as you want. When Duan Lingtian received the keys and heard the beautiful innkeeper's words, he was completely stunned. The room fee was waived? Could it be that being handsome can waive the room fee? Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Why? While Duan Lingtian was still in a daze, Li Fei looked at the beautiful innkeeper and asked with a curious look. The beautiful innkeeper glanced at Li Fei, her jade-like eyes revealed a trace of reminiscence. Little girl, when I look at you, it's as if I'm looking at myself in the past. As for why you're waiving the room fee, it's because he looked at your man and smiled at him. The beautiful innkeeper's words made Duan Lingtian come back to his senses. It turned out that this beautiful innkeeper didn't waive the room fee because of his looks. Him? When Li Fei heard the beautiful innkeeper's words, she was somewhat puzzled. She had no idea what the beautiful innkeeper was talking about. That's right, it's him. An enchanting smile appeared on the beautiful manager's face. He rarely smiles at others. Since he smiled at your man, it means that your man is different from the rest. Anyone who can make him smile can stay in my inn for free, no matter how long. The beautiful innkeeper's words caused Li Fei to be even more bewildered. Now, probably only Duan Lingtian was able to understand the meaning behind the beautiful innkeeper's words. Because only he saw the slovenly young man in the restaurant opposite the inn earlier, and only he saw the slovenly young man smile at him. Looks like the beautiful innkeeper of this Shenqi Inn is secretly in love with that slovenly young man, and that slovenly young man ought to be aware of it as well. Otherwise, he wouldn't have only glanced at me and smiled at me before turning around. At this instant, Duan Lingtian guessed many things. Duan Lingtian thanked the beautiful innkeeper before passing the key in his hand to Xiong Quan, then he brought along Li Fei and stepped onto the stairs of the inn. Duan Lingtian slightly turned his head, and he could see that the beautiful innkeeper was continuing to steal glances at the slovenly young man. I never imagined that I would be able to encounter such an interesting matter as soon as I arrived at the ancient city of Everlast. Chapter 346. Scoundrel, what's so interesting? Do you know something? Li Fei heard Duan Lingtian's muttering, and a trace of curiosity appeared in her eyes as she asked slowly. I'll tell you when we get back to the room. Duan Lingtian smiled mysteriously, took Li Fei's hand, and found the heaven room number 1. He opened the door and went in and locked the door behind him. Scoundrel. Li Fei was about to continue asking, but she saw Duan Lingtian's eyes revealing a hungry wolf's gaze. She suddenly seemed to realize something, and her delicate body trembled and her pretty face flushed. Duan Lingtian pounced on Li Fei like a hungry wolf pouncing on its prey. After a while of entanglement, Duan Lingtian hugged Li Fei, who had a satisfied expression on her face, and quietly lay on the bed with a satisfied smile on his face. Scoundrel, you haven't told me what you found just now. Li Fei leaned on Duan Lingtian's strong shoulder and asked curiously. Obviously, Li Fei was very interested in the matter of the beautiful shopkeeper. Duan Lingtian smiled and told Li Fei his discovery one by one, and then asked, Isn't it interesting? It can't be, right? Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Li Fei was absent-minded for a moment and muttered, That shopkeeper was so outstanding just now, but she actually fell for a sloppy, slovenly drunkard? That drunkard is really a blessing from 3 lifetimes. And the most annoying thing is that the drunkard actually didn't appreciate it? Li Fei was a little angry as she spoke, and she felt injustice for the beautiful shopkeeper. This made Duan Lingtian speechless for a while. He really couldn't understand a woman's thoughts. In his opinion. So what if that sloppy young man was a drunkard? He still had the right to choose. If you like someone, you like them. If you don't like them, you don't like them. It wasn't something that could be influenced by a beautiful appearance. After resting for a while, the sky gradually darkened. Duan Lingtian patted Li Fei's perky butt and said, Little Fei, get up and put on your clothes. Let's go to the restaurant across the street to eat and then stroll around the ancient city of Everlast's night market. After being slapped by Duan Lingtian, Li Fei's pretty face turned red and her eyes blurred. Only after she put on her clothes and put on her veil did she manage to hide the redness on her face. At this time, Duan Lingtian also finished putting on his clothes. Duan Lingtian brought Li Fei out of the door and called out to Xiong Quan. The 3 of them then left the inn. Before leaving the inn, Duan Lingtian noticed that the beautiful shopkeeper was still leaning against the counter, looking at the restaurant across the street. Could it be? When Duan Lingtian walked out of the inn and looked up, he found that the sloppy young man was still leaning against the window and drinking. Li Fei noticed the sloppy young man as well, and she grunted in a low voice, seeming to be extremely displeased with the sloppy young man. Let's go. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled, then he held Li Fei's hand and brought Xiong Quan along to walk into the Eternal Jade restaurant before them. They stepped onto the stairs that were surrounded by verdant plants and walked up to the 2nd floor of the restaurant. Even though there were many people eating on the 2nd floor of the restaurant, it seemed to be extremely quiet. Duanling Tian and Li Fei had only just sat down when a beautiful young woman whose appearance wasn't inferior to the beautiful manager of Xianqi Inn and whose age was similar to the beautiful manager of Xianqi Inn walked over and lightly smiled as she asked Duanling Tian and Li Fei, "Guess what would you like to eat?" Right at this moment, Duanling Dan noticed that after the young woman appeared, the originally calm gaze of the sloppy young man that was leaning against the window suddenly lit up and descended onto the young woman. At this moment, it seemed as if only this young woman remained in the world of the sloppy young man's eyes, and there was nothing else. Duanling Tian was extremely familiar with this sort of gaze, and it would only appear when facing the person he loved. Looks like this sloppy young man likes this young woman. Duanling Tian came to a sudden understanding. Could it be that this is the legendary love triangle? Big sister, are you the shopkeeper of this restaurant? Li Fei looked at the young woman and blinked her beautiful eyes as she asked curiously. Sort of. The young woman lightly smiled as she nodded. Sort of. Li Fei was stunned and didn't understand the meaning behind the young woman's words. The young woman continued. This restaurant was opened by me and my manager. Duanling Tian's gaze was sharp, and he was able to notice that when the young woman spoke the words manager, her gaze couldn't help but dim slightly, and it contained traces of an indescribable feeling mixed within, and she was extremely unconfident. Duanling Tian was bewildered. This young woman seemed to be extremely unconfident when mentioning her husband. It was slightly strange. So that's how it is. Li Fei smiled. She'd noticed the lack of confidence in the young woman's eyes as well, but she didn't ask any further. After all, every family had its own difficulties. Suddenly, as if she'd thought of something, Li Fei's beautiful brows frowned slightly as she looked at the sloppy young man that was drinking wine before the window, and then she slowly said to the young woman, "Big sister, why does your restaurant allow everyone to come up? This sloppy drunkard seems to have stayed in your restaurant for a long time, right? Doesn't it affect the business of your restaurant? Do you want us to help you drive him away?" As she finished speaking, Li Fei's eyes contained traces of excitement mixed within. The corners of Duanling Tian's mouth twitched. Looks like Li Fei was still unable to let go of the matter of the sloppy young man ignoring the female shopkeeper of the restaurant. The beautiful shopkeeper of the restaurant that stood before Duanling Tian and Li Fei was stunned when she heard Li Fei, and then she couldn't help but laugh. Her laugh was extremely beautiful. "Big sister, what are you laughing at?" Seeing the female shopkeeper of the restaurant suddenly laugh, Li Fei's beautiful eyes contained a trace of puzzlement. "Young miss, he's the owner of my restaurant." The female shopkeeper shook her head and smiled as she spoke slowly. The female shopkeeper's words not only caused Li Fei to be stunned, even Duanling Tian was stunned. That sloppy young man was the husband of this restaurant's female shopkeeper? That husband that could cause her to have a lack of confidence? Duanling Tian was slightly speechless. Could it be that the ways of the world had changed? Such a beautiful female shopkeeper of a restaurant actually had a lack of confidence when mentioning that sloppy husband? Little brother. Suddenly, a voice sounded by Duanling Tian's ear, and it caused Duanling Tian's expression to change. His gaze focused, and only now did Duanling Tian notice that unknowingly, the sloppy young man was standing beside the female shopkeeper of the restaurant and lightly smiled at him. "We meet again." "Yeah, we meet again." Duanling Tian took a deep breath, and his heartbeat sped up slightly. When did this sloppy young man appear before the female shopkeeper of the restaurant? With his acute spiritual force he actually didn't notice in the slightest. "Young master, he's not simple." Right at this moment, Xiong Quan's voice transmission sounded out in Duanling Tian's ears. Xiong Quan's voice obviously contained slight fear mixed within. Actually, even if Xiong Quan didn't remind him, Duanling Tian had noticed that this sloppy young man wasn't simple. This sloppy young man seemed to be sloppy and slovenly, but he was actually an extremely particular person. At the beginning, Duanling Tian didn't carefully observe the sloppy young man, so he didn't notice. But now, Duanling Tian was able to discern this from the smooth appearance of the sloppy young man. So it turned out that the sloppy and slovenly appearance of the other party was only a disguise. You know each other?" The female shopkeeper of the restaurant had a dumbstruck expression when she saw Duanling Tian greet her husband. The sloppy young man stretched out his hand and held onto the slender hand of the female shopkeeper, and he held it tightly before saying with a light smile, "I saw him enter Xianqi's inn earlier, Xianqi." Suddenly, the delicate figure of the female shopkeeper trembled. Duanling Tian was slightly surprised. At this moment, he was able to notice that when she heard the two words Xianqi from the mouth of the sloppy young man, The female shopkeeper was obviously slightly moved. Moreover, at that moment, the lack of confidence on the female shopkeeper was even more obvious. Shenchi. Could it be that this is the name of the female shopkeeper of the inn? Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as he guessed in his heart. It seemed that the couple in front of him knew the female owner of the inn. Duan Lingtian's train of thought gradually became clear. The female shopkeeper of the inn obviously liked this sloppy young man. As for the sloppy young man, he was the husband of the female innkeeper of the restaurant. Moreover, it was obvious that he only had the female innkeeper in his heart. This could be seen from his disregard for the female innkeeper and his pity for the female innkeeper. However, even though the sloppy young man's heart was with the female shopkeeper of the inn, the female shopkeeper of the inn seemed to be extremely lacking in confidence. This was something that Duan Lingtian was unable to figure out no matter what. It was too complicated. Logically speaking, the female shopkeeper of the inn wasn't confident, and it was completely unnecessary. Because her husband's heart was completely with her, and besides her, there was no one else. Perhaps there's another reason. Duan Lingtian could only think like this. The sloppy young man lightly squeezed his wife's palm, then looked at Li Fei and changed the topic. Young miss, you were asking my wife if she needed you to help her drive me away earlier, right? I. Li Fei's beautiful face flushed red under the veil, and she didn't know what to say for a time. Actually, when she found out early on that the sloppy young man was the husband of the female shopkeeper of the inn, she knew that she'd misunderstood the sloppy young man. It wasn't that the sloppy young man looked down on the female shopkeeper of the inn, but he already had a wife. It's all a misunderstanding. Duan Lingtian smoothed things over for Li Fei, and he lightly smiled to the sloppy young man and the female shopkeeper of the inn. May I know how I should address you, big brother and sister-in-law? He helped to change the topic. This sloppy young man was unfathomable, and it caused fear to arise in his heart. When the sloppy young man heard Duan Lingtian, he glanced at the female shopkeeper of the inn, and he seemed to be seeking her opinion. The female shopkeeper of the inn lightly nodded. Little brother, I'm Zhang Shouyong and this is my wife Wang Qiong. The sloppy young man nodded with a smile to Duan Lingtian. Obviously, he didn't fuss about what Li Fei had said earlier, and he was extremely magnanimous. So it's big brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile. I'm Duan Lingtian and this is my fiancée Li Fei. I hope big brother Zhang and sister-in-law can forgive me for offending you earlier. Brother Lingtian, you must be joking. It's only a small matter, and as the saying goes, the ignorant are not guilty. Chapter 347. The manager and wife of the Eternal Jade restaurant were both easygoing people, so they only smiled and didn't take Li Fei's rudeness to heart. Brother Lingtian, what are you and little sister Li Fei eating? Wang Qiong looked at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, and her beautiful eyes flickered as she asked with a light smile. Sister-in-law, serve the dishes to us. We don't have anything we don't eat. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled to Wang Qiong. All right. Wang Qiong nodded with a smile before turning around and preparing to leave. As for Zhang Shouyong, he nodded to Duan Lingtian and Li Fei before returning to the window and leaning against the window as he drank wine from his wine gourd. The wine gourd in his hand was like a bottomless pit, and the wine within it could never be finished. Duan Lingtian shook his head. If it wasn't for him seeing through Zhang Shouyong's disguise now, perhaps he would really think that this slovenly young man was only an alcoholic. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian looked at Li Fei who was beside him, and when he recalled the scene of Li Fei targeting Zhang Shouyong earlier, he couldn't help but laugh. Scoundrel, you're still laughing. When Li Fei saw Duan Lingtian staring at her and laughing, how could she not know what Duan Lingtian was laughing about, and she instantly felt slightly embarrassed. All right, I won't laugh anymore. Duan Lingtian shook his head and stopped teasing this little girl. Li Fei's beautiful eyes flickered as she asked curiously. Scoundrel, where do you think this big brother Zhang's charm comes from? He already has a beautiful wife at home, and there's even a beautiful manager that likes him. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Since ancient times, love is undoubtedly the most complicated thing. Who can clearly explain the matters of love? Scoundrel, I noticed that big sister Wang Qiong seems to be slightly unconfident before big brother Zhang. Have you noticed? Li Fei asked in a light voice. Duan Lingtian nodded. I've noticed. Scoundrel, do you want to know why? Li Fei's eyes were filled with curiosity, as if she wanted to know more about the relationship between the owner and his wife. This made Duan Lingtian smile. This little girl was actually so curious. However, Duan Lingtian asked himself, and his heart was undoubtedly filled with curiosity. What? Do you have a way to find out? Duan Lingtian asked curiously when he saw the glint in Li Fei's eyes. Li Fei smiled mysteriously. For the time being, she had no intention of telling Duan Lingtian. This made Duan Lingtian gnash his teeth in hatred. He really wanted to punish Li Fei on the spot. Soon the dishes were served. Xiongquan, sit down and eat with us. Duan Lingtian gestured for Xiongquan to sit down. Xiongquan had been eating and drinking with him the entire time. For the past 4 months, he hadn't had a decent meal. Thank you, young master. Xiongquan sat down respectfully. Duan Lingtian noticed that Li Fei had only eaten a few mouthfuls before leaving her seat and walking towards the female owner. Big sister Wang Qiong, let me help you. Now, Duan Lingtian understood Li Fei's intentions. Looks like Li Fei wanted to use this opportunity to probe Wang Qiong's intentions. This restaurant looks pretty good. Let's have dinner here tonight. Suddenly, a wave of clamorous voices sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. In next to no time, he could see a few middle-aged men talking and laughing loudly as they walked up to the second floor of the Eternal Jade Restaurant. Their clamorous voices broke the silence of the second floor of the Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian frowned. The other customers that were eating on the second floor of the restaurant frowned as well, and their faces were filled with displeasure. This restaurant is rather quiet. The surprised voice of one of the middle-aged men was like a clap of thunder in the quiet second floor. Right at this moment, a cold and indifferent voice suddenly sounded out. Loud clamoring is prohibited in the Eternal Jade Restaurant. Customers, if you're unable to do this, then please leave. When he heard this voice, Duan Lingtian looked towards the slovenly young man that was leaning against the window. Presently, it was precisely this special restaurant's manager, Zhang Shouyong, who was speaking. The few middle-aged men were stunned for a moment when their voices were suppressed by Zhang Shouyong. In next to no time, they recovered from their shock and walked over in large strides before surrounding Zhang Shouyong by the window. The middle-aged man in the lead sneered. A rotten drunkard like you dares to teach me a lesson? Let me tell you, I've always been so casual when I go to restaurants. When did a drunkard dare be so arrogant? You're simply courting death. Rotten drunkard, say that again if you have the guts. See if I don't throw you out. The other middle-aged men looked at Zhang Shouyong and revealed crazy smiles on their faces. Finally, Zhang Shouyong, who'd been drinking with his head lowered, moved. Eternal Jade Restaurant. You're not welcome. Zhang Shouyong spoke slowly, and after he finished speaking he picked up his wine gourd and poured a mouthful of wine into his mouth, then lightly shook his head, seeming exactly like a rotten drunkard. These fellows are going to be out of luck. Duan Lingtian sat in the distance and just happened to see a trace of fierceness flash within Zhang Shouyong's calm eyes, and his heart slightly jerked. Ha! Hearing Zhang Shouyong's words, the few middle-aged men started laughing loudly, and after laughing they wanted to mock him once more. But unfortunately they didn't have the chance. Whoosh! Suddenly an ear-piercing sound of the air being torn apart sounded out. In the next moment, before Duan Lingtian's eyes, the few middle-aged men emitted shrill cries, and it was as if they'd flown out of the window. Bang! 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 Outside the window, a wave of oppressive sounds of a heavy object falling to the ground sounded out, accompanied by a wave of shrill cries. So fast. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted. He knew clearly in his heart that it was surely Zhang Shouyong who'd made a move earlier. But he only heard the ear-piercing sound of the air being torn apart when Zhang Shouyong made a move, and he didn't see Zhang Shouyong make any movements. It was even to the extent that the silhouette that condensed above Zhang Shouyong flashed and vanished swiftly, causing it to be difficult for his eyes to catch a glimpse of it. Xiongquan, did you see him make a move clearly? Duan Lingtian looked at Xiongquan and asked with a low voice. Xiongquan nodded with a serious expression, and after a short moment he said, his speed was extremely swift. I didn't see the silhouette that flashed in the sky above him clearly as well. But I can be sure of one thing. He's stronger than me. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted when he heard Xiongquan. Before Zhang Shouyong, even Xiongquan felt inferior? After all, since the origin restriction goo within Xiongquan's body was removed, not only had he recovered to the 6th level of the void prying stage, his cultivation had even broken through to the 7th level of the void prying stage now. Didn't that mean that Zhang Shouyong's strength was still at the 9th level of the void prying stage or above? It was difficult for him to imagine. A young man that looked to be a little over 30 years old actually possessed such a terrifying strength. Taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian stretched out his acute spiritual force. wanting to rely on his spiritual force and the lifetime of experience of the Samsara Emperor Wu to detect Zhang Shouyong's cultivation. But the outcome exceeded his expectations. When his spiritual force fused into Zhang Shouyong's body, it was like a stone that sank into the sea. Just like when he investigated the mysterious yellow-clothed young girl Han Xuanai, there were only two possibilities for such a situation to occur. Firstly, Zhang Shouyong was similar to Han Xuanai and knew how to conceal the aura of his cultivation, or perhaps he cultivated a cultivation technique that allowed the aura of his cultivation to be restrained. Secondly, Zhang Shouyong was at the second void stage, or in other words, an expert at the void initiation stage or above. Void initiation stage at only a little over 30 years old? He didn't find it strange that a void initiation stage expert that was a little over 30 years old would appear in the foreign lands. But the ancient city of Everlast that appeared in the area of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom caused Duan Lingtian to feel that it was slightly unbelievable. In the end, Duan Lingtian determined that Zhang Shouyong ought to belong to the first situation. But even then, his heart was still filled with shock. After all, not to mention the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, even if it was in the entire Darkstone Empire, or even the Dark Han Dynasty, an expert at the 7th level of the void prying stage that was a little over 30 years old was an existence that was rare like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. After the middle-aged men that were thrown out of the window by Zhang Shouyong emitted a few shrill cries, they completely stopped moving. Obviously, they'd realized how terrifying Zhang Shouyong was and had already left. The Eternal Jade restaurant once again recovered its calm. After Duan Lingtian finished eating, Li Fei returned, and when he saw the smile that hung on her face, Duan Lingtian knew that Li Fei had gained something. "It's some more." Duan Lingtian didn't ask Li Fei impatiently, and after he let her eat her fill, he asked, "You found out?" Li Fei nodded, and her beautiful face contained slight complacency mixed within. Duan Lingtian's gaze lit up, and he intended to pay the bill and leave. But Wang Qiong was unwilling to accept his money. "Brother Lingtian, little sister Li Fei and I hit it off at first sight. Coupled with you calling my leader big brother, how could we accept your money? Take it back. Then I'll thank sister-in-law." Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile and didn't persist. Then he bid his farewells to Zhang Shouyong before holding Li Fei's hand and leaving with Zhang Shouyong. When they left the Eternal Jade restaurant and walked towards the night market of the ancient city of Everlast, Duan Lingtian looked curiously at Li Fei and asked, "Little Fei, what did you find out?" Li Fei sighed. "So it turns out that big sister Wang Qiong is a pitiful person as well." "Pitiful person?" Duan Lingtian had a puzzled expression as he listened seriously. Big sister Wang Qiong was originally a woman with extremely excellent natural talent in the martial Dao. Later on, an unforeseen event occurred, and her dantian was damaged, causing her to be unable to accumulate origin energy any longer. According to her, Big Brother Zhang's natural talent in the martial Dao is extremely high, causing her to feel ashamed of her inferiority, and she always felt that she wasn't worthy of Big Brother Zhang. Li Fei spoke slowly. Duan Lingtian came to a sudden understanding when he heard Li Fei. So it turned out that the reason Wang Qiong wasn't confident was because she was unable to accumulate origin energy, whereas Zhang Shouyong was an expert in the martial Dao. He could understand. The union of an ordinary woman and a man with an extremely monstrous natural talent in the martial Dao was indeed an extremely great pressure. But since they'd already gotten married and were husband and wife, why bother about all this? Perhaps Wang Qiong has a knot in her heart. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Moreover, this knot in her heart was very likely related to the female manager of the desolate Pool Inn. Li Fei continued. "I really misunderstood Big Brother Zhang earlier. So it turns out that Big Brother Zhang even gave up everything for the sake of Big Sister Wang Qiong and followed her to this remote ancient city of Everlast to open the Eternal Jade restaurant." Chapter 348. Scoundrel. Li Fei looked at Duan Lingtian and traces of shock appeared on her beautiful face. "I heard Big Sister Wang Qiong say that Big Brother Zhang's strength is extremely strong. When I asked her if Big Brother Zhang was a nascent soul martial artist, she only smiled and shook her head. Could it be that Big Brother Zhang is a void stage expert? Nascent soul martial artist?" Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Little Fei looked down on Zhang Shouyong too much. "Little Fei, I can only say, even Xiong Quan is ashamed of his inferiority to Big Brother Zhang's cultivation." Duan Lingtian slowly said to Li Fei. "What?" Li Fei's beautiful face abruptly went pale when she heard Duan Lingtian. She knew of Xiong Quan's cultivation. 7th level of the void prying stage. Even if it was amongst void prying stage martial artists, he could be considered to be one of the top. After being stunned for a moment, Li Fei looked at Xiong Quan, seeming to want to obtain further confirmation from Xiong Quan. It wasn't that she didn't believe Duan Tian, but this matter was too shocking. Only when she saw Xiong Quan nod did Li Fei completely confirm it, and she had a shocked expression as she muttered. Big Brother Zhang's cultivation is actually stronger than Xiong Quan's? Doesn't that mean that Big Brother Zhang is an expert that has surpassed the 7th level of the void prying stage? Gradually, Li Fei's eyes revealed a trace of envy. Envy of Wang Qiong. Wang Qiong, a woman that couldn't cultivate, was undoubtedly lucky and happy to be able to obtain the unreserved love of such an outstanding man. From the beginning until the end, that outstanding man had extremely tender love for her, and was even willing to give up everything to bring her to this remote ancient city of Everlast to open a restaurant, all for the sake of helping her realize her dream that she'd always had. What? My little Fei is envious of others? Do you think I'm inferior to Big Brother Zhang? Duan Tian overbearingly held Li Fei's hand as he asked with a smile. Li Fei blushed and snorted, "You womanizer. Big Brother Zhang is much more faithful than you. There's no other way. You've already boarded a pirate ship. You can't escape." Duan Tian chuckled and pinched Li Fei's palm. She looked at Li Fei with a coquettish expression before strolling around the night market of the ancient city of everlasting desolation. As the city with the largest trading scale in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, the night market in the ancient city of Everlast was extremely bustling. It was even to the extent that when Duan Tian and Li Fei passed by, they would occasionally see some people having conflicts over small matters, and they would frequently kill each other. However, the passers-by looked on coldly. They seemed to be used to this and were not surprised. It's really a chaotic city. Duan Tian could not help but sigh. Bastard, let's go back. Li Fei frowned slightly. She was not used to it. She was different from Duan Tian after all. No matter what, Duan Tian was a mercenary that crawled out from mountains of corpses and seas of blood in his previous life. Not only would he not be disgusted by all this, he would even feel it to be slightly intimate. Okay. Duan Tian saw Li Fei's slightly pale face under the veil and nodded. He held Li Fei's hand before turning around and returning to the inn. Xiong Quan followed closely behind Duan Tian and Li Fei, vigilantly observing the surroundings. Once someone dared to harm Duan Tian and Li Fei, he would make a move at the first possible moment and kill that person. Protecting the safety of the young master and the people by the young master's side was the meaning of his existence. After returning to the Profound Pool Inn, Duan Tian noticed that the female manager's actions had not changed at all, and she was still gazing with infatuation at the slovenly young man in the opposite restaurant. Duan Tian shook his head and held Li Fei's hand as they returned to the room. "Little Fei, since you're not used to this place, we'll go to the Solitary Summit tomorrow and find Shangguan Yen. After completing the Boundless Sect's young sect master's instructions, we'll leave," Duan Tian said to Li Fei. Li Fei lightly nodded and quickly fell into a deep sleep on the bed. Looking at the exhausted Li Fei, Duan Tian felt a bit of heartache. He lightly stroked Li Fei's beautiful face that was as smooth as jade, and his eyes were filled with tenderness like water. The next morning, Duan Tian and the other two prepared to depart. "Let's go say goodbye to Big Sister Wang Qiong and Big Brother Zhang." Before leaving the inn, Li Fei said to Duan Tian. Duan Tian nodded. However, when the two of them left the inn and bathed in the fresh morning mist, they noticed that the Eternal Jade restaurant hadn't opened for business yet. Duan Tian shook his head and smiled. "Looks like we woke up too early. Then we'll come say goodbye to them when we return and then we'll leave," Li Fei suggested. Duan Tian agreed and spurred his horse out with Li Fei. Xiong Quan followed closely behind like a shadow. After leaving the ancient city of Everlast, Duan Tian's group of three headed towards the Solitary Summit. The Solitary Summit stood in the distance, and it was even more majestic than the Seven-Star Sword Sect's main peak, Dubhe Peak. The Solitary Summit seemed to be very close, but when Duan Tian's group of three galloped at full speed and arrived at the foot of the Solitary Summit, it was already an hour later. The Solitary Summit's mountain path was wide and extremely level, and it was completely capable of using a horse to ascend it. Duan Tian's group of three spurred their horses to head up the Solitary Summit. All along the way they were able to see that there were some buildings more or less built on the mountainside of the Solitary Summit. They were either wooden houses made of bricks, or luxurious buildings that were like palaces. The solitary summit is so huge, wanting to find Shangguan Yin here is simply like looking for a needle in a haystack. After asking all along the way, there wasn't any news related to Shangguan Yin, and it caused Duan Lingtian to be unable to help but reveal a bitter smile, as he felt this was a difficult mission. I thought we'd be able to directly find Shangguan Yin after arriving at the solitary summit, but I never imagined that no one knows him at all. Li Fei's beautiful brows frowned and she was slightly vexed. The solitary summit is so huge it's not strange that they don't know Shangguan Yin. Let's continue up the mountain and see if we're able to find out any news related to Shangguan Yin. Duan Lingtian spoke slowly as he spurred his horse forward. Finally, when they arrived near the peak of the solitary summit, Duan Lingtian's group of 3 finally found out about Shangguan Yin. All of you are looking for Shangguan Yin? A robust old man with a face covered in stubble looked at Duan Lingtian's group of 3, and his fierce eyes glared. Who are all of you to him? Senior, we're members of the Boundless Sect. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he spoke to the robust old man. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the experience of the Samsara Emperor Wu, he was able to discern that this robust old man was a 9th-level void-prying stage expert. His strength wasn't inferior to the 7-star sword sect's Migres Peak's master, Wu Dao. Boundless Sect. The robust old man pondered for a moment when he heard Duan Lingtian, then muttered. I seem to have heard of this sect somewhere. Right, that old fellow Shangguan Yin once said that the sect he was in was called the Boundless Sect. Finally, the robust old man reacted, and he looked at Duan Lingtian's group of 3 and asked. All of you are Shangguan Yan's disciples? Disciples and grand disciples? The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched, yet he still nodded. Exactly, Shangguan Yin is precisely the ancestor of our Boundless Sect. Senior, we're looking for him for an urgent matter. Do you know where he's cultivating in the solitary summit? As he finished speaking, Duan Lingtian looked at the robust old man with an expression of anticipation. Unexpectedly, the robust old man shook his head. I'm afraid all of you have made a wasted trip this time. Shangguan Yin had already left the solitary summit 7 or 8 years ago. I originally thought that he missed his disciples and returned to the Boundless Sect, but now it would seem that it isn't so. The robust old man's words caused Duan Lingtian's expression to freeze. That Shangguan Yin had already left the Hermit Summit 7 or 8 years ago. 7 or 8 years ago. At that time, the Boundless Sect hadn't encountered a calamity. Whereas the Boundless Sect's young sect leader thought that Shangguan Yin was at the solitary summit, in other words, Shangguan Yin hadn't returned to the Boundless Sect. We've really made a wasted trip. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a bitter smile as he shook his head. Shangguan Yin had left the solitary summit and his whereabouts were unknown. The Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom was extremely large. Not to mention the current him, even the Samsara Emperor Wu at his prime might not be able to find Shangguan Yin under the circumstances that he didn't have any clues. Thank you, Senior. Duan Lingtian bid his farewells to the robust old man before leaving with Li Fei and Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan, according to your knowledge, besides the solitary summit, where would Shangguan Yin go? Duan Lingtian held on to his last trace of hope as he asked Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan laughed bitterly. Young master, I don't know as well. Although Xiong Quan was a guardian of the Boundless Sect, he'd only entered the Boundless Sect later on and had never seen Shangguan Yin. Duan Lingtian nodded. He knew that wanting to find Shangguan Yin now was no different than searching for a needle in a haystack. This matter could only be temporarily put aside. Giddy up. Duan Lingtian called out to Li Fei, and the two of them spurred their horses out together, following the wide and gentle mountain path to head down the solitary summit. Xiong Quan spurred his horse to follow closely behind like a shadow. It was said that going down the mountain was easy, but going up the mountain was difficult, and these words weren't false in the slightest. The time Duan Lingtian's group of 3 used to arrive at the foot of the solitary summit was only half the time they used to ascend the mountain. This was even after discounting the time they used to inquire about Shangguan Yan's whereabouts all along the way. Scoundrel, let's go to the ancient city of Everlast to say our farewells to big sister Wang Qiong and big brother Zhang. Li Fei lightly smiled as she spoke to Duan Lingtian, and Li Fei, whose face was covered by a veil, was still delicate and moving. Okay. Duan Lingtian's eyes emitted a wisp of gentleness as he lightly nodded. Giddy up. Right at this moment, a shocked shout suddenly sounded out from afar. A blue-clothed young man spurred his Fergana horse to dash towards the solitary summit with a speed that was swift. Behind the young man was an old man, who was following closely behind him. Let's go. Duan Lingtian glanced indifferently at the blue-clothed young man, then called out to Li Fei and Xiong Quan, preparing to leave the solitary summit. Right at this moment. Halt. Duan Lingtian noticed that when the blue-clothed young man was about to pass by them and enter the solitary summit, he seemed to have noticed something and suddenly pulled on the reins, forcefully stopping the Fergana horse. Along with a burst of dust, the Fergana horse beneath the young man stood still. When Duan Lingtian saw the gaze that was revealed from the blue-clothed young man's eyes, his face couldn't help but sink. Chapter 349. Halt. The old man behind the blue-clothed young man had now caught up and pulled on the reins, causing the Fergana horse beneath him to stop before standing by the young man's side. Duan Lingtian's gaze squinted. Relying on his acute spiritual force and the lifetime of experience of Samsara Emperor Wu, he was able to discern. This old man's cultivation ought to be at the 5th level of the void-prying stage without a doubt. As for the blue-clothed young man, he was around the age of 25, and his cultivation was at the 7th level of the origin core stage. Umph. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's face sank, and he grunted coldly as he spurred his horse forward to block the young man's lustful gaze that looked at Li Fei. His eyes were filled with coldness as they focused on the young man. His woman couldn't be disrespected by others. Li Fei noticed the young man's gaze earlier, and her beautiful face beneath the veil sank slightly. Now, when she saw Duan Lingtian blocking before her, it caused the gloominess on her face to vanish without a trace, and replacing it was a light smile of happiness. This was her, Li Fei's man. A man she could rely on for her entire lifetime. The young man's face couldn't help but sink when his gaze of admiring a beauty was blocked, and he looked at Duan Lingtian as he shouted coldly. Kid F***K off. Although the young woman wore a light veil and her appearance couldn't be seen clearly, but he who'd seen countless women was able to discern that she was a beauty just by looking at the young woman's pair of willow-shaped brows and beautiful eyes, and she was absolutely a top-grade beauty. This top-grade beauty was far from being comparable to the group of vulgar women in his home. Especially this young woman's hot figure, it caused his imagination to roam. His lower abdomen heated up and a greedy desire arose within his heart, a desire to take this young woman for himself. Now, his mood was disturbed and he couldn't help but be slightly enraged. Duan Lingtian suddenly started laughing when he heard the young man ask him to F***K off, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile that contained slight coldness mixed within. I'll give you the time of 10 breaths to vanish from my sight right now. Otherwise, bear the consequences. Bear the consequences? When the young man heard Duan Lingtian's words, he was stunned for a moment before he reacted and couldn't help but laugh. The young man's eyes were filled with disdain as he looked down at Duan Lingtian. Kid, you said earlier that you'd give me 10 breaths of time to vanish from your sight. Otherwise, I'll be responsible for the consequences? Now the young man even thought that he had misheard. Because no one had ever dared to talk to him like this or threaten him like this. 8 more breaths of time. Duan Lingtian looked at the young man calmly. His face was as cold as ever, and he was not affected by the young man at all. The young man finally confirmed that he had not heard wrongly. Immediately he looked at Duan Lingtian and sneered, Kid, it seems like you're quite bold. 8 breaths of time, right? Let me tell you, I can kill you in less than 8 breaths of time. The young man's words were filled with disdain and overbearingness. 6 more breaths of time. Duan Lingtian continued speaking with a calm voice that contained traces of killing intent mixed within. Uncle G. The disdain on the young man's face grew even deeper as he abruptly shouted out in a low voice. Young master. The old man by the young man's side replied respectfully. I'll kill this kid and his servant within 5 breaths of time. The young man spoke with a clear voice, and his cold and indifferent gaze swept past Duan Lingtian and Xiong Quan who stood behind Duan Lingtian. As he spoke, it was as if killing 2 people was a common occurrence to him. As soon as he finished speaking, the young man added, Uncle G, you must not injure that little beauty when you make a move. I want to take her back and make her my 27th concubine. Ah. As he finished speaking, the young man started laughing loudly, and his voice was filled with arrogance and lewdness. 27th concubine? When he heard the young man, the coldness in Duan Lingtian's eyes grew even colder and oppressive as he said coldly, 3 more breaths of time. Uncle G, do it. The young man abruptly shouted out explosively, and his eyes emitted madness. As far as he was concerned, so long as he killed these 2 irksome fellows, that little beauty would be his. At that time, wouldn't she be at his mercy? When he thought of how this beautiful woman with a hot figure was about to become his plaything, the lustful sheen in the young man's eyes grew even brighter. Yes, young master. As soon as the young man finished speaking, the body of the old man on the Fergana horse beside him trembled slightly, and he directly soared up from the Fergana horse and floated in the air. The old man's gaze was extremely icy cold as it descended onto Duan Lingtian and Xiong Quan, and it was as if he was looking at two dead people. Perhaps, in the eyes of the old man, Duan Lingtian and Xiong Quan were bound to be two dead people in the next moment. Kid, in this world there are some people you can't afford to offend. Remember this when you reincarnate in your next life. The young man looked at Duan Lingtian as he laughed arrogantly, and his eyes were filled with viciousness. Is that so? Duan Lingtian sneered, then shouted in a low voice. The time of 10 breaths is already up. Xiong Quan. Yes, young master. Xiong Quan replied, then his eyes abruptly squinted and emitted awe-inspiring killing intent. Whoosh! Right at this moment, an ear-piercing howl of the wind sounded out. Duan Lingtian's face sank as he noticed that the old man that floated in the air had suddenly vanished before his eyes. At almost the exact same moment, an awe-inspiring strong wind assaulted his face. Duan Lingtian knew clearly in his heart that the old man was flashing towards him with an extremely swift speed, desiring to kill him. Above the sky, 7,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes could be seen condensing into form. This was precisely the symbol of the 5th level of the void prying stage. Now, this 5th level void prying stage old man didn't even utilize a spirit weapon or force when making a move against Duan Lingtian. Perhaps, as far as he was concerned, Duan Lingtian didn't have the qualifications to make him utilize his spirit weapon and force. In the distance, the young man that sat on the Fergana horse revealed a slightly insane and lustful expression when he saw this scene. Die. Once you're dead, that little beauty by your side will be mine. Right at this moment. Whoosh! An exceedingly swift figure whistled out, accompanied by a shocked shout that was like a thunderclap. A mere 5th level void prying stage martial artist dares be presumptuous before my young master? It was Xiong Quan's figure that flashed out, and in the blink of an eye he descended before Duan Lingtian before the old man approached Duan Lingtian, then he floated in the sky and blocked the old man's path. Above Xiong Quan the energy of heaven and earth roiled, and the number of ancient mammoth silhouettes ceaselessly rose, 8,000 heads. 9,000. When it increased to 9,999, all the ancient mammoth silhouettes trembled and completely converged together, causing a wave of clouds and mist to roil. When the clouds and mist dispersed, an enormous creature that coiled down appeared before the eyes of everyone. This enormous creature was a few tens of meters long, and its powerful body spiraled in the sky, seeming lifelike. Its bloody mouth would occasionally open, swallowing clouds and spitting out mist, and it brought a visual shock to others. The enormous creature was 50% or 60% similar to the Eastern Divine Dragon in Duan Lingtian's impression, but it was slightly smaller than the Eastern Divine Dragon. Moreover, its appearance seemed to be even more savage and extremely deterring. Horned Dragon. This was an ancient horned dragon. During the ancient times, the strength of an ancient horned dragon was comparable to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths. Presently, Xiong Quan's strength had soared to the point it was comparable to the strength of an ancient horned dragon. It was equivalent to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths. 7th level of the void prying stage. A voice that was mixed with trembling abruptly sounded out, and it contained traces of fear mixed within. It was the old man that charged towards Duan Lingtian like a bolt of lightning, and when Xiong Quan appeared before Duan Lingtian, he hurriedly flashed back and floated in the sky. As he looked at the lifelike ancient horned dragon silhouette above Xiong Quan, the old man's eyes emitted terror that came from his soul. As this middle-aged man's figure flashed, he drew upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense into the strength of an ancient horned dragon. He didn't utilize a spirit weapon, nor did he utilize force. The old man was well aware of what this meant. 7th level of the void prying stage. This was a 7th level void prying stage expert. This is an ancient horned dragon? Duan Lingtian's gaze descended onto the sky above Xiong Quan. Even though he knew beforehand that Xiong Quan had already broken through to the 7th level of the void prying stage. Relying on the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, he knew that Xiong Quan was able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense into an ancient horned dragon silhouette. However, this was the first time he'd seen an expert at the 7th level of the void prying stage or above make a move. It was the first time he'd seen an ancient horned dragon. Ancient horned dragon? Li Fei had a bewildered expression as she'd never heard of an ancient horned dragon. Little Fei, in Cloud Continent, martial artists are able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to develop ancient mammoth silhouettes. However, when the number of ancient mammoth silhouettes reaches 10,000, it would automatically transform into an ancient horned dragon silhouette. Duan Lingtian noticed Li Fei's bewilderment and slowly explained. This is the rule of Cloud Continent, the iron law of Cloud Continent. In other words, the strength of an ancient horned dragon is comparable to the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths. Li Fei came to a sudden understanding when she heard Duan Lingtian's explanation, and she completely understood. Ancient horned dragon strength? In the distance, the blue-clothed young man that sat on the Fergana horse revealed a dumbstruck expression after Xiong Quan drew upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense into an ancient horned dragon silhouette. Only now did he react to what had happened. At the instant he reacted, his eyes were filled with a sheen of disbelief. No. Impossible. How could there possibly be a 7th-level void prying stage expert by the side of this immature kid? No. Impossible. Impossible. He wasn't willing to believe that all this was true. Immediately after, his chest was completely filled with panic and fear. Now, there was only a 5th-level void prying stage martial artist by his side, whereas there was a 7th-level void prying stage expert by his side. Chapter 350. Right at the same time that panic arose in the blue-clothed young man's heart. Xiong Quan, kill this old fellow? Suddenly, Duan Lingtian looked at the old man that floated in the distant sky and abruptly spoke with a voice that contained traces of icy coldness that didn't contain the slightest emotion. He could imagine that if it wasn't for Xiong Quan, he would have already been killed by this old man earlier. At the instant the old man vanished before his eyes, the murderous intent that assaulted his face caused him to almost feel suffocated. He didn't want to feel that feeling a second time in his entire lifetime. It was too unbearable. Yes, young master. Xiong Quan replied, and a cold light flashed within his eyes. With a raise of his hand, a meter-long blade appeared in his hand. The old man's face went pale at the instant Duan Lingtian finished speaking. Now, when he saw Xiong Quan's actions, his eyes revealed terror, and his figure shook as if transforming into a ghost as he flashed directly towards the blue-clothed young man, grabbing the latter with the intention of fleeing. Obviously, he wanted to flee with his young master. But, would he be able to flee? Xiong Quan's cold snort sounded out abruptly, and it seemed to be able to condense the air. In practically an instant. In Duan Lingtian's eyes, Xiong Quan vanished on the spot, and when he appeared once more, he'd already caught up to the old man that carried the blue-clothed young man and soared into the sky, intending to flee into the solitary peak. Swish! An ear-piercing sword howl sounded out. It was only a single sword strike, a sword strike that was swift to the extreme, a sword strike that was like a bolt of lightning, and a sword strike that carried a terrifying aura transformed into a sword light that flashed out, causing the air to condense. Whoosh! At practically the same time, another 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the ancient horned dragon silhouette above Xiong Quan. These 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes surrounded the ancient horned dragon silhouette like a host of stars surrounding the moon, as if they were worshipping an emperor. The Grade 7 Spirit Sword in Xiong Quan's hand was able to amplify the strength of 3,000 ancient mammoths on the basis of the strength of an ancient horned dragon. Advanced Sword Force was able to amplify the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. When the two were added together, it was the strength of 5,000 ancient mammoths. A strand of dazzling red rose condensed from fresh blood abruptly bloomed in the air. It was bright and beautiful. The old man that was carrying the blue-clothed young man with the intention of fleeing abruptly stopped in midair as the bright light in his eyes faded away, and the 7,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes above his head vanished into thin air along with it. Cough. The old man's throat trembled and a bloody hole appeared on his throat. It was extremely strange and a pillar of blood gushed out, dazzling and eye-catching. Boom. The old man's body suddenly fell, and the blue-clothed young man in his hand fell with him. At this moment, the blue-clothed young man's face was splashed with blood from the old man's throat, but he seemed to be unaware of it. His eyes were wide open, and his body was trembling as if he was extremely frightened. Duan Lingtian looked at the old man's corpse calmly. So what if he was at the 5th level of the void prying stage? In front of Xiong Quan, who was at the 7th level of the void prying stage, he was similarly like an ant. If Xiong Quan wanted to kill him, it would be as simple as cutting grass. Whoosh! After killing the old man, Xiong Quan's figure shook as he returned to the Fergana horse, and he respectfully followed behind Duan Lingtian with a calm gaze, as if he'd only done something of no importance. Duan Lingtian sat on the Fergana horse, and his icy cold eyes descended onto the blue-clothed young man who was dumbstruck. "I gave you a chance." Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold, and although his tone was calm, it concealed awe-inspiring killing intent. The blue-clothed young man's body trembled as he recovered from his shock. Then he looked at Duan Lingtian and revealed a terrified expression as he shouted out in shock. "You can't kill me. You can't kill me. I can't kill you?" Duan Lingtian laughed, and he laughed extremely brilliantly. Whoosh! Suddenly, a 1-meter-long blade appeared out of thin air in Duan Lingtian's hand, and it flickered with a faint sheen of origin energy as he prepared to attack at any moment. "Kid, you're dead if you dare kill me. You're dead." The young man's expression changed when he saw the 1-meter-long blade in Duan Lingtian's hand, and he suddenly shouted out explosively. "If you dare kill me, my grandfather won't let you off." The young man didn't finish his words in the end. "Idiot!" Because Duan Lingtian had already flashed out and sent the 1-meter-long blade in his hand into the young man's chest. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian coldly snorted, and his leg flashed out like lightning, kicking the young man who had his body pierced through by the 1-meter-long blade in his hand. The latter crashed onto the ground with a bang, and he completely lost all signs of life. Dead. Duan Lingtian's figure flashed, and he took the storage rings from the hands of the old man and young man one by one. A dazzling golden grade 7 pill fire appeared in Duan Lingtian's palm, and it slowly pulsated. Duan Lingtian raised his hand and the grade 7 pill fire descended, directly landing on the corpses of the old man and young man, and igniting them together. "Let's go." After the pill fire descended, Duan Lingtian extinguished the ceaselessly burning pill fire in his hand. He couldn't be bothered to take another glance at the corpses of the two people, and he returned to the Fergana horse and called out to Li Fei and Xiong Quan. The three of them spurred their horses and galloped out, heading towards the ancient city of Everlast. Duan Lingtian planned to bring Li Fei to bid farewell to the manager and wife of the Eternal Jade restaurant, and after they finished, they would leave the ancient city of Everlast and return the way they came. Duan Lingtian had already planned it out in his heart. He was in a hurry when he came and didn't properly savor the scenery along the way. On the way back he must bring little Fair to have a good time and go on a scenic tour. Whoosh! Whoosh! Not long after Duan Lingtian's group of three left, two figures flashed down from a large tree outside the secluded summit, and in the blink of an eye, they arrived before the two burning corpses. Bang! Bang! The two people made a move, and the bone-piercing origin energy in their hands transformed into cold winds that roared out and extinguished the pill fire on the corpses. Presently the old man's corpse was almost completely burned, and only half of the young man's corpse remained. The two people that made a move now were two middle-aged men. Luckily you can still recognize him. One of the middle-aged men heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the young man's complete face, and the corners of his mouth suffused with a wisp of a smile. "Second brother, he's indeed the grandson of the withered old man. We've struck it rich this time. You go follow those three people, I'll send him to the withered old man's place, and then I'll go look for you with the withered old man." The other middle-aged man nodded, and at the same time that he dashed out, he whistled. The sound of the whistle sounded out. Suddenly, in the distance of the Hermit Peak, an extremely swift leopard-type fierce beast flew over. The middle-aged man's figure flashed to descend onto the back of this leopard-type fierce beast, and then he dashed out with a speed that far surpassed the Fergana horse. "Withered old man, you're going to owe us brothers a great favor this time." The corners of the middle-aged man's mouth was suffused with a wisp of a smile. After that, he raised his hand and carried the remnants of the blue-clothed young man's body as he soared up into the sky, directly ascending towards the top of the mountain. Ancient city of Everlast. When it was close to noon, Duan Lingtian's group of three had rushed back. Just in time to have lunch at the Eternal Jade restaurant. Duan Lingtian smiled, then he urged his horse to stop outside the Eternal Jade restaurant before dismounting and holding Li Fei's hand as they walked into the restaurant. As for Xiong Quan, he'd gone to take care of the three Fergana horses. Big brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei walked up to the second floor and nodded with a smile as they looked at the slovenly young man that was drinking by the window. Zhang Shouyong replied with a smile, then he continued drinking. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei had just sat down when Wang Qiong walked over and asked with a light smile. "Brother Lingtian, little sister Li Fei, both of you are covered in dust. You went out early in the morning?" Yeah, big sister Wang Qiong, we went to the Eternal Jade Peak early in the morning to look for you, but unfortunately we didn't find you. Li Fei lightly nodded, then said, Big sister Wang Qiong, scoundrel, and I came to bid our farewells to you and big brother Zhang. We're preparing to return after lunch. So fast. Wang Qiong was slightly surprised, then she smiled. I thought both of you would stay for a period of time, but I never imagined that you would leave so quickly. I wasn't even mentally prepared for your sudden departure. But since both of you are leaving, then I'll personally cook for both of you today. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei didn't have any reaction, yet the slovenly young man that was drinking by the window seemed as if he'd been injected with chicken blood, and his figure flashed over to sit by Duan Lingtian's side. Brother Lingtian, it's all thanks to both of you today. Zhang Shouyong looked at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei as he lightly smiled, and he seemed to be extremely greedy for Wang Qiong's cooking. You speak as if I've starved you usually. Wang Qiong coquettishly glared at Zhang Shouyong before turning around and preparing to leave. Big brother Zhang, could it be that big sister Wang Qiong doesn't usually cook for you? Li Fei looked curiously at Zhang Shouyong as she asked. That's not it. Zhang Shouyong lightly shook his head as a wisp of tender affection appeared on his face. It's just that I usually see her busy with the matters of the restaurant, and I'm afraid she'll be too tired, so I rarely let her cook. But the food your big sister Wang Qiong cooks will surely make you praise it endlessly, and you'll even wish for nothing more than to swallow your tongue. As he finished speaking, Zhang Shouyong smiled. Looks like we'll be able to eat our fill today. Li Fei's beautiful eyes lit up, and they were filled with anticipation. Young master. Meanwhile, Xiong Quan had already settled down the 3 Fergana horses and walked into the Eternal Jade restaurant. Sit down, let's eat together. Duan Lingtian said to Xiong Quan. Thank you, young master. Xiong Quan sat down. Brother Lingtian is really considerate to the servants. Zhang Shouyong glanced at Xiong Quan and lightly smiled. After that, he seemed to have noticed something and he looked outside the Eternal Jade restaurant and frowned. Brother Lingtian, you brought someone else? Zhang Shouyong's words caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned. No, what's wrong? It's nothing. Zhang Shouyong shook his head. He noticed that the feeling of being watched had vanished at this moment. Maybe I'm mistaken. In next to no time, the food that Wang Qiong personally cooked was served. A table full of fragrant delicacies, and just the smell of it had already caused Duan Lingtian's appetite to be aroused. Big sister Wang Qiong, sit down and eat as well. After the table was filled, Li Fei looked at Wang Qiong and invited her. All of you eat first. There's still soup, I'll go bring it out. Chapter 351. Eternal Jade Restaurant. Duan Lingtian and the others sat around a circle and ate the fragrant and steaming dishes with large mouthfuls. It's too delicious. No wonder big brother Zhang said we would even wish for nothing more than to swallow our tongues. Big sister Wang Qiong, your culinary skill is too good. Li Fei praised as she ate. Eat more if you like. If it's not enough, I'll make more. Wang Qiong smiled to Li Fei, and her beautiful eyes contained slight tender affection mixed within. She liked this little sister from the bottom of her heart. After the meal, Wang Qiong started to clean up the dishes, and Zhang Shouyong went into the kitchen to help as well. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei sat at the table to rest, and they intended to rest for a while before bidding farewell to Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong. Senior withered old man, they're within this restaurant. Suddenly, a clear voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears, and the voice sounded out from outside the Eternal Jade restaurant, and it grew closer and closer. Whoosh! 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 In the next moment, Duan Lingtian heard 3 ear-piercing howls of the wind sound out by his ears. In the blink of an eye, 3 figures appeared before his eyes. Standing behind them were 2 middle-aged men, one wore azure clothes, the other wore red clothes, and their appearances were exactly the same. Obviously they were a pair of twin brothers. Before the 2 middle-aged men stood an emaciated old man. The old man's body was thin and only skin and bones, and it seemed as if a gust of wind would blow him down. But Duan Lingtian didn't dare look down on the old man because of this. He was able to discern that amongst the 3 people before him, the old man's strength was the most terrifying. Relying on his spiritual force and the experience of Samsara Emperor Wu, he was able to see through the cultivation of the 2 middle-aged men, and they were both 4th-level void-prying stage martial artists. As for the old man, when his spiritual force stretched out, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. It was extremely likely that the old man was in existence at the 2nd void stage, or in other words, the void initiation stage. Duan Lingtian's heart sank. It's him? Duan Lingtian saw the old man suddenly speak, and at the instant the old man's muddy eyes descended onto him, it was suffused with a ghastly cold light that seemed as if it was about to swallow Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian's heart jerked. The old man's target was him? Yes. Meanwhile, the azure-clothed middle-aged man behind the old man hurriedly nodded. Senior withered old man, us brothers saw him kill your grandson with our own 2 eyes. The attendant by your grandson's side was killed by this 7th-level void-prying stage martial artist. The middle-aged man's gaze first fell on Duan Lingtian, then he looked at Xiong Quan who was standing beside Duan Lingtian. The middle-aged man's words caused Duan Lingtian's pupils to shrink. He finally understood what was going on. It turned out that his actions at the foot of the Hermit Summit this morning had been exposed. This old man that seems to be a void initiation stage expert is actually the grandfather of that blue-clothed young man I killed? He remembered that before the blue-clothed young man died, he seemed to have mentioned this old man. However, at that time Duan Lingtian was in a fit of rage. How could he possibly care about him? However, even if he knew now that there was an existence that seems to be at the void initiation stage behind the blue-clothed young man, he didn't regret it in the slightest. Not only did that blue-clothed young man dare disrespect little Fei, he even wanted to kill him. He truly deserved death. He could imagine that if it wasn't for Xiong Quan's protection, the person who died this morning wouldn't be that young man, but him. So he didn't regret it. If he really wanted to talk about regret, then what Duan Lingtian regretted the most now was not seeing those 2 corpses being burned into ash with his own 2 eyes. Although he didn't see what happened after that, he was able to guess a thing or two. It ought to be that when he and Xiong Quan made a move, it was seen by the twin brothers behind the old man. Later on, one of them went to inform the old man and the other followed them all the way here. Looks like Big Brother Zhang noticed the people following us earlier. Duan Lingtian recalled that before lunch, Zhang Shouyong had asked him if he'd brought anyone else over. For a time, Duan Lingtian's heart was clear like a mirror. Why did you kill my grandson? The sharp gaze of the gaunt old man descended onto Duan Lingtian, and it seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty venomous snake that would bite Duan Lingtian at any moment. Duan Lingtian could feel the old man's killing intent that was difficult to restrain. He deserves death. Duan Lingtian's gaze went slightly cold and his tone was calm, yet mixed with a murderous intent. At this moment, Duan Lingtian knew that he had no other choice and could only fight head-on. Now, he still couldn't confirm if the old man was a void initiation stage expert. Perhaps he still had a chance. He'd already sent a voice transmission to Xiong Quan, asking Xiong Quan to wait for an opportunity to launch a surprise attack on the old man, and strive to kill him in one strike. He deserves death? The gaunt old man was stunned when he heard Duan Lingtian. In next to no time, his gaze descended onto Li Fei who was by Duan Lingtian's side. Presently, Li Fei hadn't worn her veil, and her drop-dead gorgeous appearance was clearly visible. When he saw Li Fei, the gaunt old man's eyes flickered with a fierce light, and he said in a low voice, "Looks like my grandson was destroyed by a woman." Obviously, the old man knew his grandson very well. Now that he saw Li Fei, he easily guessed some things. When he felt the bloodthirsty killing intent that rose from the gaunt old man towards Li Fei, Duan Lingtian's face went grim, and he hurriedly stood up to stand before Li Fei, blocking this bloodthirsty killing intent for Li Fei. Duan Lingtian's expression was cold and indifferent, and his back was straight. He wasn't afraid in the slightest when facing the old man's bloodthirsty killing intent, and he remained unmoving like a mountain. Scoundrel. When the old man's killing intent enveloped over, Li Fei felt as if she was within a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and that suffocating feeling caused her to feel extremely uncomfortable. Now Duan Lingtian was blocking before her, and at the same time that it caused her heart to feel warm, she was slightly worried. The gaunt old man's white brows raised when he saw this, and he grunted coldly. "Kid, needless to say, you're really not bad. But unfortunately you're dead for sure today. As they say, beauties bring disaster. Remember to stay far away from women like this in your next life." Whoosh. As soon as the gaunt old man finished speaking, origin energy flickered on his gaunt hands. Swoosh. Right at this moment, an ear-piercing sound of the sky being torn apart carried along a string of explosions as it abruptly resounded out. It was Xiong Quan who'd always been waiting for an opportunity to make a move. When he saw his young master's life was in danger, Xiong Quan's figure flashed out as if transforming into a bolt of lightning that flashed directly towards the gaunt old man. Swish. A dazzling sword light shot out violently like a venomous snake leaving its hole, and it pointed towards the old man while carrying traces of an extremely terrifying aura. Advanced Sword Force. In the sky, the origin energy of heaven and earth roiled as an ancient horned dragon silhouette appeared first. Then around this ancient horned dragon silhouette, almost 5,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared, and they surrounded the ancient horned dragon silhouette like a myriad of hearts surrounding the moon. As soon as Xiong Quan attacked, he exerted his full strength and didn't hold back in the slightest. He intended to directly kill the old man. Advanced Sword Force? The old man's slightly muddy eyes squinted, and his voice contained a trace of surprise mixed within. After that. Petty tricks. The old man sneered as he casually raised his hand to intercept Xiong Quan's attack. Instantly, the origin energy of heaven and earth roiled above the old man before condensing into two ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the end. The old man didn't utilize a spirit weapon, nor did he utilize the concept of a void initiation stage expert. Only a pure origin energy attack was comparable to the strength of two ancient horned dragons. First level of the void initiation stage. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted as his face went grim, and he abruptly shouted out explosively. Duan Lingtian, watch out. Meanwhile, Xiong Quan saw the two ancient horned dragon silhouettes that appeared above the old man, and he instantly realized that the old man was a first-level void initiation stage expert. His face couldn't help but go grim. Slap. The old man raised his hand and grabbed, easily seizing the grade 7 spirit sword in Xiong Quan's hand. At this moment, Xiong Quan's strength at the 7th level of the void prying stage, the amplification of the grade 7 spirit sword, and even the advanced sword force were so weak as if they were made of paper. Move aside. Duan Lingtian's acute spiritual force vaguely detected that the old man was about to attack, and he shouted out explosively once more to warn Duan Lingtian. When Xiong Quan heard Duan Lingtian's voice, based on his trust towards Duan Lingtian, he didn't hesitate in the slightest to stomp his feet on the ground as he completely exploded out with the strength of an ancient horned dragon, desiring to dodge to the side. Swish. At practically the instant Xiong Quan moved, the grade 7 spirit sword the old man seized from Xiong Quan was like a stroke of genius as it flashed directly towards Xiong Quan. This sword was originally flashing towards Xiong Quan's heart. It was precisely because of Duan Lingtian's warning that Xiong Quan was able to dodge a moment earlier, allowing his heart to be spared. However, even then the grade 7 spirit sword still easily entered Xiong Quan's body. It struck his dantian. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, transforming into numerous red roses. Xiong Quan's body fiercely flew out, flipping over a few tables. No. No. Xiong Quan's voice was filled with panic, and after he fell to the ground, he fiercely clenched his fists. However, what appeared above him now wasn't an ancient horned dragon silhouette, it was an ancient mammoth silhouette. 9th level of the body tempering stage. His dantian was crippled by the old man's sword strike, causing his origin energy to be completely lost, and only his cultivation at the 9th level of the body tempering stage remained. Xiong Quan roared for a short moment before stopping, and he had a dazed expression. Right at this moment, a wave of clamorous noise sounded out. It was the group of customers that were eating on the 2nd floor of the Eternal Jade restaurant that were watching the show. When they saw the matter developing to such an extent, they were afraid that it would affect them, and all of them were in a panic as they left their silver and left, fighting to be the first to leave the restaurant. Xiong Quan. Duan Lingtian glanced at Xiong Quan, and his eyes turned crimson red, and his expression was terrifyingly gloomy. A trace of guilt arose within his heart. If it wasn't for him wanting to go to the solitary summit, Xiong Quan wouldn't have appeared here, and nothing would have happened to him. During these past few years, Xiong Quan had followed him, worked for him, and did his best without the slightest complaint. He'd always been grateful in his heart. Now, because of him, Xiong Quan's cultivation had been crippled. He empathized with Xiong Quan. When he heard Duan Lingtian's shocked shout, Xiong Quan raised his head, and when he noticed Duan Lingtian's gaze, he couldn't help but force out a laugh. Young master, I'm fine. I just lost my origin energy. My advanced sword force is still there, and no one below the void prying stage is able to block a single strike of mine. Advanced sword force was a type of profound comprehension of the sword that void prying stage martial artists possessed. It was separated from origin energy. Chapter 352. A wisp of bitterness appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth when he heard what Xiong Quan said. A 7th level void prying stage expert had his dantian crippled in the blink of an eye, causing his origin energy to be completely lost, and he was even inferior to a first-level void-prying stage martial artist? How could this be called fine? Duan Lingtian asked himself. If it was him, he would surely be unable to accept this reality. He knew clearly in his heart that Xiong Quan was only consoling him. Xiong Quan didn't want him to feel guilty. But how could he not feel guilty? Xiong Quan, I owe you. At the same time that Duan Lingtian sighed in his heart, a wisp of bitterness appeared on the corners of his mouth. What he owed Xiong Quan, he would probably only be able to return in his next life. He'd killed the grandson of this void initiation stage expert, so it was impossible for the old man to let him go. Taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian stared coldly at the gaunt old man in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Scoundrel. Meanwhile, Li Fei held Duan Lingtian's hand and stood shoulder to shoulder with Duan Lingtian. Go through thick and thin together. As far as she was concerned, being able to go through life and death with Duan Lingtian in this lifetime was not a life in vain. Little Fei. When Duan Lingtian saw Li Fei like this, the coldness and indifference on his face vanished without a trace, and replacing it was gentleness that was like water. He lightly stretched out his hand to stroke Li Fei's beautiful face. Do you regret knowing me? Li Fei shook her head. Being able to know you in this lifetime is the greatest favor of the heavens to me. Even if I leave with you in the next moment, I won't regret it, because I'll always be by your side. You'll never be alone. Duan Lingtian nodded heavily, then took a deep breath and squeezed out a trace of a smile on his face. His eyes gradually revealed a trace of firmness. No matter what, so long as there was a trace of a chance, he wouldn't allow anything to happen to little Fei. Umph. A cold snort sounded out, breaking this beautiful atmosphere. What a touching scene. My pitiful grandson died because of this woman. The gaunt old man's voice was cold and indifferent, and his face was gloomy like water. All of a sudden, whoosh, the old man moved and made his move. In the blink of an eye, Li Fei was taken away from Duan Lingtian. Little Fei. Seeing this, Duan Lingtian's expression changed greatly. The moment he came to his senses, he flew out, wanting to save Li Fei. Whoosh. The old man casually raised his leg, causing the shadows of his leg to sweep out, and he only used the strength of over 100 ancient mammoths to kick Duan Lingtian flying. In that instant, Duan Lingtian felt his internal organs tremble and a sweet taste in his throat. Boom. In the next moment, his entire body flew out like an arrow from a bow, slamming heavily into the wall. Duan Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood. The shock from his internal organs almost suffocated him. However, seeing that Li Fei was still in the old man's hands, Duan Lingtian suddenly roared and flew out again as if he had turned into a poisonous snake. Sword drawing technique. The sword flashed out like lightning, heading straight for the old man. Swish. The sword light that flashed by seemed to have transformed into the fangs of a poisonous snake, biting towards the old man. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. The old man laughed coldly as he casually raised his hand and blasted Duan Lingtian flying once more. Duan Lingtian spat out a mouthful of blood once more, barely supporting himself with his sword, and his body swayed as if he would fall to the ground at any moment. Scoundrel! This scene caused Li Fei's eyes to almost split apart as she cried out in grief. Whoosh. Right at this moment, a slovenly figure flashed out from the second floor of the Eternal Jade restaurant, and in his hand was a beautiful woman. It was precisely Jianghu and Jianghu of the Eternal Jade restaurant. Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong. They were originally busy in the kitchen, and they rushed out at the first possible moment when they noticed the commotion. Zhang Shouyong frowned when he saw the scene before him, whereas Wang Qiong's beautiful face went pale. Little sister Li Fei. Kid, looks like you have deep feelings for this woman. You're actually risking your life for this woman. The gaunt old man only glanced indifferently at Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong before paying no further attention to them. Perhaps he felt that these two people weren't of any threat to him. His gaze once again descended onto Duan Lingtian, and traces of coldness were mixed within. Old fellow, your grandson was killed by me, and it has nothing to do with her. You're a void initiation stage expert at any rate. Don't you feel ashamed of making things difficult for a weak woman? If there's anything, feel free to come at me. Duan Lingtian looked at the gaunt old man and gnashed his teeth as he spoke. Truly touching. A wisp of a strange smile appeared on the old man's face as he looked at Duan Lingtian and said indifferently, Kid, I know that this woman is surely the culprit behind the reason you killed my grandson. How about this? I'll give you a chance. I'll let you leave, but leave this woman behind and I'll kill her. How about it? Duan Lingtian grunted coldly and disregarded the old man. Not to mention that he didn't believe that the old man would be so kind. Even if what the old man said was true, it was still impossible for him to leave. Li Fei was his woman, his life. Asking him to abandon his woman and use his woman's life to exchange for his life and live an ignoble life by himself? He would rather die. Scoundrel, leave quickly. However, Li Fei believed it and looked at Duan Lingtian as she said anxiously, leave quickly. In the future you have to take good care of little sister Kerr and live well with little sister Kerr. In Li Fei's eyes, even if she could use her life to exchange for her man's life, she would have no regrets. Did you hear that? Your woman is asking you to leave as well. Kid, you'd better leave quickly so as to avoid leaving your life here. A wisp of a cold smile appeared on the corners of the old man's mouth as he grunted. Duan Lingtian didn't pay attention to the old man and looked at Li Fei as he lightly shook his head. Little Fei, you're too foolish. I was the one who killed his grandson, how could he let me off so easily? Even if he's willing to let me off, if it's at the cost of your life. I Duan Lingtian would rather die. Duan Lingtian would rather die. Duan Lingtian's tone was resolute and filled with the will to die. His heroic spirit soared to the heavens. Scoundrel. Li Fei's delicate body trembled as tears fell from her autumn eyes like rain. At this moment, even though she was facing a life-and-death crisis, her heart was still filled with happiness. At this moment, it was as if Duan Lingtian was the only person left in the world in her eyes. This was her man, she was Li Fei's man. Duan Lingtian's determination made the old man's expression extremely ugly. Naturally, he wouldn't be so kind as to let Duan Lingtian leave. He only wanted to destroy the laughable feelings between this young couple and let them know how fragile their so-called feelings were. Now, it seemed that he had failed. This young man who killed his grandson was actually willing to die for this woman. Taking a deep breath, the old man's hand shook as he directly threw Li Fei out and said coldly, I'll give you the time of 10 breaths to disappear before my eyes, and I can spare your life. Otherwise, I'll let you be buried with this kid. As the old man finished speaking, his eyes emitted a cold and fierce expression. He still wanted to see the scene of the murderer of his grandson being abandoned by everyone. Only in this way could he dispel the hatred in his heart. Seeing this scene, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sneer. Old man doing the same thing twice. Don't you feel bored? In your heart, I'm afraid you wish for nothing more than to burn our bones and scatter our ashes. Would you let any one of us leave? Laughable. Duan Lingtian's words caused the old man's face to flicker between green and white. Scoundrel. Li Fei arrived by Duan Lingtian's side and helped the ghastly pale Duan Lingtian up, and the gaze she looked at Duan Lingtian with was filled with gentleness that was like water. So long as she was able to be together with this man, even if she had to die in the next moment, she would have no regrets. In the distance, Zhang Shouyong was slightly moved when he saw this scene. Subsequently, his gaze descended onto Wang Qiong who was by his side. Presently Wang Qiong's beautiful face was completely covered in tears, and she seemed to have transformed into a tearful beauty. The unwillingness between Duan Lingtian and Li Fei had deeply infected her. The feelings between the two of them had already surpassed life and death. It was shocking. Kid, what you mean is that I'll go back on my word? The killing intent in the old man's eyes was awe-inspiring and his face sank. For the sake of seeing the scene of Duan Lingtian being abandoned by everyone, he secretly gritted his teeth and made a decision. With a raise of his hand, the origin energy in his hand transformed into needles that pierced into the tip of his finger. A strand of light fresh blood sprinkled down into the sky. I, withered old man, swear with my blood that so long as this woman is willing to abandon this kid and leave, and let this kid taste the pain of being abandoned by everyone, I, withered old man, am willing to let this woman live. If I go against this oath, then I, withered old man, am willing to be blasted to death by the 99 heavenly tribulation. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the fresh blood in the sky strangely rose up into the sky. In the blink of an eye, that strand of fresh blood emitted a dignified and formidable aura. This aura pressed down on everyone present, including the withered old man, to the point their bodies couldn't help but tremble. Bang! That strand of fresh blood directly penetrated the roof of the Eternal Jade restaurant and shot into the sky. After a short moment, bang! A thunderclap descended from the horizon, and it alarmed the entire ancient city of Everlast. A void-prying stage martial artist is overcoming the 6-9 heavenly tribulation in the ancient city of Everlast? This was the thought that arose in the hearts of most people at the first possible moment. Only because this thunderclap wasn't ordinary thunderclap. Bang! Subsequently, another thunderclap sounded out in the horizon. Wait, it's impossible for the interval between the 6 bolts of tribulation lightning of the 6-9 heavenly tribulation to be so short. Some void stage experts that had experienced the 6-9 heavenly tribulation spoke out in astonishment. Bah, 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 bah. In next to no time, another thunderclap sounded out. It sounded out a total of 9 times before it stopped. This is 9-9 heavenly tribulation? For a time, the entire ancient city of Everlast was in an uproar. 9-9 heavenly tribulation. Within the Eternal Jade restaurant, Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted, as he never imagined that the old man would actually swear such a heavy oath. Looks like this old fellow is really willing to let little Fei go for the sake of seeing the scene of me being abandoned by everyone. Duan Lingtian's heart slightly trembled, and he guessed the old man's objective in doing this. In next to no time, he looked at Li Fei who was by his side, and his eyes emitted traces of tender affection, and within this tender affection was slight reluctance mixed within. Through the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, Duan Lingtian knew the 9-9 heavenly tribulation like the back of his hand. The 9-9 heavenly tribulation was the tribulation of an oath that caused one to tremble with fear upon hearing its name. In Cloud Continent, other oaths didn't have much binding force, and only relied on one's conscience, and the person that made the oath could go back on it at any time. Chapter 353. Eben's second Alliance Master has been born. Thank you, little she-devil. It was said that once a person on Cloud Continent made an oath using his own blood and the 9-9 heavenly tribulation, he would be directly struck to death by the 9-9 heavenly tribulation if he dared to violate it. Similar incidents had happened many times on Cloud Continent. Therefore, no one dared to easily make an oath using the 9-9 heavenly tribulation. This withered old man really hates me to the bone. Duan Lingtian looked at the skinny old man with a gaze that was cold and indifferent like ice. The old man looked at Li Fei as the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Now you can leave in peace. I really look forward to seeing how painful it will be for this kid when you abandon him and leave. As he finished speaking, a wisp of an evil smile appeared on the corners of the old man's mouth. It was as if he had already seen the scene of Duan Lingtian betraying his friends and family. Li Fei's clear eyes were suffused with coldness as she calmly glanced at the old man and no longer paid any attention to him. Her slender hands tightly held onto Duan Lingtian, and her gaze was firm as before without the slightest change. She would not abandon her man and live an ignoble life. Just like how her man would not abandon her. Little Fei, oh. When Duan Lingtian saw the withered old man make an oath using the 9-9 heavenly tribulation and was willing to let Li Fei go, he originally wanted to persuade Li Fei to leave. However, when he saw the gaze contained within Li Fei's eyes, he noticed the meaning that Li Fei wanted to express. It was incomparably firm and would never leave. In the end, he didn't open his mouth and a brilliant smile appeared on his face. He stretched out his hand and embraced Li Fei in his arms, and felt Li Fei's heartbeat. At this moment, Li Fei's heartbeat seemed to have completely merged with his heartbeat, and it was difficult to distinguish them. I'll give you the time of 3 breaths. If you still don't leave, then you'll be buried with him. The old man's withered body trembled slightly. He suddenly realized that everything he had done just now seemed to be useless. This young couple, although young, was actually willing to give up their lives for love. This made him feel that it was inconceivable, and at the same time he was a little angry from embarrassment. Li Fei completely ignored the old man's threat. She quietly leaned into Duan Lingtian's embrace, taking in the familiar scent of Duan Lingtian's body and enjoying every second. She really hoped that this moment would last forever. As for Duan Lingtian, he held Li Fei in his arms and smelled the fragrance of Li Fei's hair. He felt extremely calm. At this moment he could clearly feel that his soul had been elevated to a higher level. His spiritual power, which had been dormant for a long time, grew at an extremely fast rate. All the way to the critical point between the nascent soul stage and the void-prying stage. Duan Lingtian didn't seem to notice this at all. Or perhaps he knew deep down that even if his mind power improved, it wouldn't change anything. 3 breaths later. Looks like you're really going to die with this kid. The old man sneered, his skinny body lightly trembled as his origin energy roared. Then I'll let you and this kid be a pair of dying mandarin ducks. Whoosh! In the sky above the old man, 2 ancient horned dragon silhouettes gradually condensed into form, and their imposing auras shot into the sky like rainbows. Young master. Xiong Quan, who'd always been struggling to stand up, went ghastly pale when he saw this scene, and his body that had just propped itself up fiercely fell to the ground once more. He madly pounded his fists on the ground as if he'd gone mad, and he hated his own weakness to the extreme. Stay your hand. Suddenly, a delicate shout spread throughout the second floor of the Eternal Jade restaurant, causing everyone to be stunned. The old man's face sank as he turned to look towards the source of the voice, and his gaze descended onto Wang Qiong. I, the old man, hate people telling me what to do. This matter has nothing to do with you. If you dare speak out of turn again, then I'll let you die with them. Big brother Zhang, bring sister-in-law in. Duan Lingtian looked at the young man by Wang Qiong's side as he spoke slowly. He didn't want to be a burden to this young couple. Big sister Wang Qiong, if there's a next life, I hope to be able to eat the food you cook again. Li Fei raised her head and lightly smiled to Wang Qiong. It's really delicious. Now you and big brother Zhang quickly go in. Little sister Li Fei. Wang Qiong looked at Li Fei as a wisp of a smile appeared on her tear-stained face. You've taught me many things and allowed me to understand many things in an instant. Thank you. If you really want to eat the food big sister cooks, then you have to live well and big sister will cook for you again. Live well? Wang Qiong's words caused Li Fei to sigh. Did she still have a chance? Brother Yong. Suddenly, under the gazes of everyone present, Wang Qiong looked at the slovenly young man by her side and spoke slowly. I know that when you followed me to the ancient city of Everlast to live in seclusion, you'd once said, unless someone threatens our lives, otherwise, you wouldn't commit the sin of killing again. Suddenly, Wang Qiong's fierce gaze descended onto the emaciated old man and two middle-aged men in the distance, and her voice became slightly colder. But today, I hope you can make an exception for me. Wang Qiong's words caused everyone besides the slovenly young man to be stunned for a moment. Big brother Zhang he wouldn't be. Duan Lingtian's heartbeat sped up when he heard Wang Qiong. Right at the instant Duan Lingtian's heartbeat sped up, a chilly voice sounded out by his ears. I understand. This voice was precisely emitted from the mouth of the slovenly young man in the distance. In an instant, in Duan Lingtian's field of vision, the slovenly young man vanished on the spot, and he'd obviously sped up to the limit. Duan Lingtian only saw the energy of heaven and earth royal in the sky before condensing into three ancient horned dragon silhouettes in the end, the strength of three ancient horned dragons. Big brother Zhang. He's a second-level void initiation stage martial artist? Duan Lingtian revealed an expression of disbelief. Never had he imagined that this young man that looked to be a little over 30 years old would actually possess such a terrifying strength. Bang. Duan Lingtian's thoughts had only just spun when he heard an enormous bang. Zhang Shouyong had arrived before the old man in the blink of an eye, and his fist smashed out like a sledgehammer, and it smashed onto the old man's chest before the old man could react. The old man was smashed flying and his face flushed red. Second-level void initiation stage. The old man shouted out in shock, and he felt something sweet in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Never had he imagined that this young man that looked to be a little over 30 years old was actually an existence that was even stronger than him. Whoosh. The old man didn't dare hesitate, and the origin energy on his body roiled as a narrow sword appeared out of thin air in his hand. His origin energy skyrocketed, and it carried along an extremely terrifying aura. This aura was even stronger than the advanced force. Sword concept. Duan Lingtian's pupils constricted. In the blink of an eye, another ancient horned dragon silhouette and almost 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the two ancient horned dragon silhouettes above the old man. The 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes surrounded the three ancient horned dragon silhouettes at the center like a host of stars surrounding the bright moon. It's a grade 6 spirit sword. Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a cold light. The grade 6 spirit sword in the old man's hand was able to amplify strength by almost 40%. The strength of almost 8,000 ancient mammoths was amplified by the grade 6 spirit sword on the basis of the strength of two ancient mammoths. As for the strength of the other ancient horned dragon, that was the strength bestowed upon the old man by sword concept. Concept reigned above force. Although the old man's sword concept was only at the lowest level, first level sword concept, it still reigned above advanced sword force. Advanced force was able to allow a martial artist to gain the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths, just like Xiong Quan's advanced sword force. Whereas the first level sword concept that reigned above advanced sword force was instead able to allow a martial artist to gain the strength of 10,000 ancient mammoths, which was the strength of an ancient horned dragon. Presently, when the old man attacked with his full strength, His strength was comparable to the strength of 3 ancient horned dragons, and coupled with the strength of almost 8,000 ancient mammoths. Die. The old man's eyes were crimson red as his figure flashed out, and the narrow sword in his hand trembled as he flashed towards Zhang Shouyong like a bolt of lightning. Of course, in the eyes of Duan Tian, the old man had vanished into thin air. The old man's speed was too swift. With his current cultivation, he was utterly unable to see clearly, and only felt a gust of wind swiftly flash past as it swept towards Zhang Shouyong. Big brother Zhang, watch out. Duan Tian couldn't help but warn him. In next to no time, Duan Tian realized that his warning was unnecessary. He saw Zhang Shouyong vanish into thin air before his eyes, and when he appeared once more, he stood at the spot the old man was at earlier. A mere first-level void initiation stage martial artist with first-level sword concept dares to play tricks before me? Zhang Shouyong's voice contained slight disdain and overbearingness mixed within. Whoosh! Practically at the instant Zhang Shouyong finished speaking, a layer of light that flashed with flowing light suddenly appeared on his body. This wasn't a defensive qi barrier. Instead, it was a layer of earthen yellow-colored light barrier. Instantly, Zhang Shouyong's entire body seemed to have fused into one with the earth, and it was impossible to distinguish between him and the earth. Suddenly, Zhang Shouyong took a stride forward. Taking a step out was like a mountain collapsing. Bang! An extremely formidable aura gushed out from Zhang Shouyong's body, and it seemed to have perfectly fused into one with the entire earth. This aura was even slightly stronger than the old man's sword concept. Earth concept? As he looked at Zhang Shouyong, who seemed to have completely fused into one with the earth, Duan Tian was greatly shocked in his heart. After fusing with the memories of the Samsara Emperor Wu, he wasn't unfamiliar with concept. It was even to the extent that he was able to discern that Zhang Shouyong was executing a type of concept that was extremely difficult to comprehend, the earth concept within the concept of nature. Earth concept was able to allow one's aura to completely fuse with the earth. Not only was it capable of concealment, it was even capable of relying on the energy of the earth to attack, and it was an extremely overbearing concept. Whoosh! At this moment, another 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared beside the 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes above Zhang Shouyong. 6 ancient horned dragon silhouettes floated in the air, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as they accumulated force and were waiting to attack. Big Brother Zhang's earth concept is actually able to draw upon the energy of heaven and earth to condense into 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes? Duan Tian's pupils constricted, and he had an astonished expression. Third level earth concept. Chapter 354. Concept was similar to the cultivation level of a martial artist, and it was divided into 9 levels. Every level was stronger than the previous level. First level concept was comparable to the strength of an ancient horned dragon. Second level concept was comparable to the strength of 2 ancient horned dragons. Third level concept was comparable to the strength of 3 ancient horned dragons. And so on and so forth. The strongest concept was 9th level concept, and it was comparable to the strength of 9 ancient horned dragons. Third level earth concept. Duan Tian was shocked as well, and his heart was filled with shock when he saw Zhang Shouyong reveal a cultivation at the second level of the void initiation stage. Now, Zhang Shouyong had actually executed third level earth concept? Duan Tian didn't have the time to react when Zhang Shouyong took another step forward, and in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have completely fused into the ground and vanished without a trace. At this moment, the emaciated body of the withered old man that stood in the distance with a terrified expression suddenly trembled. Subsequently, it was as if his throat was tightly held by someone, and his face went ghastly pale as he opened his mouth, yet was unable to speak a single word for a long time. In the next moment, his eyes that flickered with a fierce light had completely dimmed down. Bang! The withered old man's body swayed a few times before crashing to the ground, and when he crashed to the ground, dazzling and resplendent fresh blood flowed out from his 7 apertures. The withered old man was a first-level void initiation stage expert. Earlier, he'd even controlled the lives of Duan Tian and Li Fei in his hands, and he was extremely domineering. But now, it was precisely such a domineering void initiation stage expert that crashed to the ground and bled to death from his 7 apertures. The scene before them caused Duan Tian and Li Fei to have an unreal feeling. Is this really a void initiation stage expert? At the same time, they were completely shocked by Zhang Shouyong's strength. Although they were unable to discern the traces of Zhang Shouyong attacking, they knew clearly that all this was related to Zhang Shouyong, who'd vanished on the spot in the blink of an eye and seemed to have fused into one with the ground. Whoosh. Right at this moment, Zhang Shouyong's slovenly figure once again appeared before the eyes of everyone, and he just happened to stand by the side of the withered old man's corpse. Zhang Shouyong calmly glanced at the withered old man as if he had done something insignificant. At this moment, the twin brothers standing at the side looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. They all realized that they had kicked an iron plate. A second-level void initiation stage expert that had comprehended third-level Earth concept. Even if it was in the surrounding area of the ancient city of Everlast, such an existence could be called a top existence. To think that they would encounter it. Run. The same thought appeared in their minds. They hurriedly executed their movement techniques and flew out of the restaurant. They wanted to escape from this place of despair. In this place they felt that their lives were completely out of their control. Zhang Shouyong's eyebrows twitched slightly. He had originally planned to chase after the two of them, but all of a sudden, he seemed to have realized something. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile as he gently shook his head. All of a sudden, Zhang Shouyong's figure flickered, disappearing from the spot. When he appeared again, he was already beside Wang Qiong. Duan Lingtian's spiritual force that had advanced to the peak of the nascent soul stage shook, and he vaguely noticed that a person was flying in from outside, and her target was the pair of fleeing twin brothers. Who is it? Right when Duan Lingtian was bewildered in his heart, a graceful figure appeared before his eyes. The figure blocked the path of the twin brothers. The lifelike silhouette of an ancient horned dragon circled in the sky above this person. Besides that, there were another 2,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes that surrounded this ancient horned dragon silhouette like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon, and it was as if they were prostrating themselves before a supreme emperor, 9th level of the void prying stage. The faces of the twin brothers that were stopped went grim as they shouted out in shock. Stay behind. The voice of the person that arrived was extremely pleasant to the ear. Instantly she made a move. Swoosh, swoosh. A pair of delicate hands flashed out like a bolt of lightning, and they seemed to have transformed into two venomous snakes that bit towards the twin brothers and directly broke their necks. Crack. The sound of bones breaking could be clearly heard, and it caused one to shudder. Bang, bang. The bodies of the twin brothers crashed down along with the person that arrived, and they followed in the footsteps of the withered old man. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei looked at each other, and they both saw astonishment in each other's eyes. Only because the young woman that had appeared before their eyes and killed the twin brothers was someone they knew. This young woman was none other than the beautiful manager of the Profound Pool, and that was opposite the Eternal Jade restaurant. Duan Lingtian never imagined that this beautiful manager that looked to be extremely delicate actually possessed such a terrifying cultivation. The beautiful manager nodded with a smile to Duan Lingtian and Li Fei, and her beautiful eyes spun with flowing lights as she looked towards the distant Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong, and her gaze descended onto Wang Qiong. Profound Pool. Zhang Shouyong nodded to the beautiful manager and greeted her indifferently. When faced with Zhang Shouyong's coldness, the delicate figure of the beautiful manager imperceptibly trembled, but it was still clearly seen by Duan Lingtian. However, Duan Lingtian knew that this was Zhang Shouyong's private matter, so he didn't pay much attention to it. He brought along Li Fei and arrived before Xiong Quan, then helped Xiong Quan up and sat down at the side. Xiong Quan, are you all right? Xiong Quan shook his head and forced out a laugh. I'm fine. After making Xiong Quan consume the grade 7 gold injury pill, Duan Lingtian started to help him dissolve the medicinal strength. The current Xiong Quan had completely lost his origin energy, so he was utterly unable to dissolve the medicinal strength of the medicinal pill. After a short while, under the assistance of Duan Lingtian's origin energy, Xiong Quan's injuries recovered greatly. Although his dantian couldn't be healed, his complexion improved slightly, and he wasn't as pale as before. I understand. Suddenly, a slightly miserable voice sounded out by Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian raised his head to look. It was the beautiful manager of Shen Qiyin, and she sighed before turning around and leaving. That graceful and beautiful figure was lonely and desolate, as if she'd lost the most important thing in an instant. Besides that, when Duan Lingtian looked at Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong, he kept having the feeling that there was something different about this young couple. In next to no time he obtained the answer. So it turned out that the problem lay with Wang Qiong. How could the current Wang Qiong have the slightest lack of confidence? Compared to the Wang Qiong of the past, the current Wang Qiong was simply like a completely different person. What happened? Duan Lingtian was puzzled in his heart. It was difficult to imagine that a person would change so much in the blink of an eye. Big brother Zhang, sister-in-law, thank you. Duan Lingtian held Li Fei's hand and walked towards Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong as he sincerely thanked them. His tone was filled with gratitude. If it wasn't for Zhang Shouyong lending a hand today, it would have been impossible for him and Li Fei to survive. Little sister Li Fei, I didn't scare you, right? Wang Qiong stretched out her slender hand to seize Li Fei from Duan Lingtian's side, and then she pulled her to her side before asking about her well-being. Big sister Wang Qiong, I'm fine. Li Fei lightly shook her head. Come, let's have a private chat. Pay no attention to them. Wang Qiong brought Li Fei to the side to sit down, and they started chatting happily. This caused Duan Lingtian and Zhang Shouyong to look at each other before smiling helplessly. The two of them found a place to sit down. After they sat down, Duan Lingtian sighed with emotion. Big brother Zhang, I truly never imagined that you're actually a void initiation stage expert. Moreover, you're a void initiation stage expert that has comprehended third-level Earth concept. Zhang Shouyong smiled. I was just lucky. Lucky? Duan Lingtian shook his head. This wasn't luck. Being able to comprehend third-level concept at such an age, Zhang Shouyong's comprehension ability caused Duan Lingtian to be shocked. According to the memories of Samsara Emperor Wu, even if it was in the foreign lands, such a comprehension ability could already be considered to be not bad. Big brother Zhang, are you from the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom? Duan Lingtian asked. No. Zhang Shouyong shook his head. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something, and he looked at Duan Lingtian and revealed a wisp of a smile. Brother Lingtian, thank you. Duan Lingtian was stunned. Thank me for what? He was unable to wrap his head around it. It seemed that Zhang Shouyong had helped him today, right? Why did Zhang Shouyong thank him instead? Brother Lingtian, I presume you ought to be extremely curious about the relationship between me and the female manager of Shenqian, right? Zhang Shouyong asked. Although he didn't know why Zhang Shouyong suddenly asked this, Duan Lingtian still couldn't help but nod. She's called Qin Xianqi and she's my childhood sweetheart. My family and hers are even friends for generations, and my family arranged a marriage for the two of us since we were young. She can be said to be my fiancée. Of course, that's all in the past. At the moment I left my family, that marriage contract didn't count. As Zhang Shouyong spoke, he picked up his wine gourd and poured a mouthful of wine into his mouth. Childhood sweetheart? Duan Lingtian never imagined that Zhang Shouyong had such a relationship with the female manager of the inn. Zhang Shouyong continued. Since I was young, I've taken her to be my own younger sister, and I've never thought that anything would happen between us. So, I've always paid no attention to that marriage contract. Later on, I got to know Qiong and quickly fell in love with her. Originally, my family didn't interfere in the matter between me and Qiong. Even though Qiong didn't have any background, her natural talent in the martial Dao was extremely good. But an accident later on caused Qiong's Dantian to be damaged, causing her to lose all her origin energy. From that moment onwards, the family started to obstruct me from having any contact with Qiong, and they wanted to separate us. They even took out that marriage contract to force me. I left the family in a fit of rage. At that time, an even greater problem descended. Qiong actually wanted to leave me, and it was because she felt she'd lost her cultivation and wasn't worthy of me, causing her to become extremely unconfident. For the sake of allowing her to regain her confidence, I took her and flew far away to the ancient city of Everlast before establishing the Eternal Jade restaurant with her. When he spoke up to hear, a wisp of a smile appeared on Zhang Shouyong's face. Here, I saw her smile once more, even though she was still so unconfident. Chapter 355. Zhang Shouyong didn't speak of what happened after that, and Duan Lingtian was able to guess a thing or two. It was none other than Qin Xianqi being unwilling to give up. Then, coupled with Wang Qiong's lack of confidence, Qin Xianqi felt that he had an opportunity to take advantage of. Therefore, the relationship between Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong had always been in a deadlock. Zhang Shouyong laughed freely. This time, the life and death relationship between you and sister-in-law infected Qiong. Qiong seemed to have thought it through in an instant, and didn't feel that she was worthy of me anymore. Her past confidence no longer existed. Even to the extent that she took the initiative to suggest leaving the ancient city of Everlast with me and going around the world. This was practically impossible in the past. Speaking up to hear, Zhang Shouyong's face was filled with excitement. Congratulations, big brother Zhang. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled as he congratulated Zhang Shouyong. Zhang Shouyong continued. Earlier, Xianqi also realized that Qiong-er had regained her confidence, and knew that she didn't have a chance anymore. So she thought it through and will leave in a few days. This time you and sister-in-law have really helped us greatly. Otherwise, if Xianqi were to drag on for a few more years, I don't know how guilty I would feel. Duan Lingtian nodded. An hour later, Duan Lingtian, Li Fei and Xiong Quan left the ancient city of Everlast once again. But there were two more people beside them. It was precisely Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong. Duan Lingtian gave up a Fergana horse to Zhang Shouyong and his wife, and he and Li Fei rode on the same Fergana horse. Duan Lingtian embraced Li Fei and spurred the horse forward. The current Zhang Shouyong had changed into a clean set of clothes and wasn't as sloppy as before. The stubble on his face had also been shaved off, and he appeared to be handsome. But the wine gourd still hung on his waist. This wine gourd was like a treasure that never left his side. Big brother Zhang, why does it seem like the wine in your gourd can't be finished? Half a month later, Duan Lingtian finally couldn't help but ask. In this half a month, he was certain that Zhang Shouyong had not replenished the wine in his wine gourd. His wine gourd was like a bottomless pit, containing an endless amount of wine. Hearing Duan Lingtian's question, Zhang Shouyong was stunned for a moment, then he couldn't help but laugh. Brother Lingtian, your big brother Zhang's wine gourd isn't an ordinary gourd. This is a grade 5 spirit weapon that can hold 5,000 kilograms of wine. Wang Qiong explained to Duan Lingtian with a smile. A 5th grade spirit weapon? Wang Qiong spoke casually, but in Duan Lingtian's ears, it was like a sudden clap of thunder. A 5th grade spiritual weapon? Li Fei, who was sitting in front of Duan Lingtian with her back leaning against Duan Lingtian's chest, couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Looking at the wine gourd in Zhang Shouyong's hand, her autumn eyes flashed with an incredulous light. Xiong Quan, who was leading the way on his horse, was also slightly moved. He was shocked. I've really misjudged. Duan Lingtian sighed with emotion. Now, his spiritual force stretched out, and he was able to notice that the wine gourd in Zhang Shouyong's hand was actually a grade 5 spirit weapon. Grade 5 spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian's mood surged. According to his knowledge, even in the entire Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, a grade 5 spirit weapon was in existence that was rare like phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. The 7-star sword sect he was in was one of the top sects in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. However, such a formidable sect seemed to only have a single grade 5 spirit weapon. It was a grade 5 spirit sword, and supposedly, it was in the possession of the 7-star sword sect's sect leader. That grade 5 spirit sword was the sword of the 7-star sword sect's sect leader that was passed down from generation to generation. Besides being able to store wine, this wine gourd ought to be an extremely terrifying offensive spirit weapon. Duan Lingtian was able to notice that this wine gourd was different. It wasn't a pure storage spirit weapon like a spatial ring, and besides that, it carried traces of a baleful aura. This was the baleful aura that only offensive spirit weapons possessed. Grade 5 spirit weapons. There are very few in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Even if it's in those empires that stand above Imperial Kingdoms, there probably aren't many of them. Could it be that Big Brother Zhang is a member of the Darkstone Empire? Duan Lingtian guessed in his heart. All along the way he tried to ask about Zhang Shouyong's origins, but Zhang Shouyong brushed it off with a smile every single time, saying that he already had nothing to do with his past and didn't want to mention it. Duan Lingtian was able to feel the carefree and resolute tone in Zhang Shouyong's words. Looks like the clan that this big brother Zhang of his used to belong to had injured him greatly. Since Zhang Shouyong was unwilling to speak, Duan Lingtian naturally didn't ask any further. This also caused Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong's origins to become a mystery in his eyes. Big brother Zhang's sister-in-law, what plans do the two of you have? Duan Lingtian asked Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong. We don't have any specific plans for now. However, we ought to first make a trip around the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. We'll first send you and sister-in-law back to the 7-star sword sect, and then we'll make plans. Zhang Shouyong lightly smiled. A trace of warmth arose in Duan Lingtian's heart. He naturally knew Zhang Shouyong's intentions. It was undoubtedly to escort him and Li Fei back to the 7-star sword sect. After all, Xiong Quan's current cultivation was different from before. Even if it was a first-level void prying stage martial artist, so long as the martial artist utilized a spirit weapon, Xiong Quan wouldn't be a match for the martial artist. Although Xiong Quan was able to execute advanced sword force that was comparable to the strength of 2,000 ancient mammoths. However, the strength bestowed by advanced sword force was unable to be amplified by spirit weapons. Spirit weapons could only amplify the strength of the fleshly body and origin energy. Currently, Xiong Quan had lost all his origin energy, and only his 9th level body tempering cultivation remained. When the strength of his fleshly body exploded out, it was only comparable to the strength of one ancient mammoth. Even if he utilized a grade 7 spirit sword to amplify it, regardless of advanced sword force, Xiong Quan's strength was even inferior to the strength of 2 ancient mammoths. Xiong Quan. Duan Lingtian sighed, then looked at Xiong Quan who was leading the way on his horse and asked, Xiong Quan, what plans do you have? Xiong Quan took a deep breath when he heard this, then slowly said, Young master, with my current strength, I'm unable to help you with anything. I want to return to my hometown. Xiong Quan's tone contained slight bitterness mixed within. Then we'll send you back to your hometown first. Duan Lingtian nodded. He respected Xiong Quan's choice. He'd already made a resolution in his heart. In the future he would surely help Xiong Quan repair his Dantian. Repair his Dantian. If someone knew what Duan Lingtian was thinking now, that person would surely curse Duan Lingtian as a madman, and feel that Duan Lingtian was indulging in wild fantasies. After all, if one's Dantian was broken, then even if one consumed the best healing panacea in Cloud Continent, the Grade 1 Life Recovery Pill, it would still be powerless. This was a publicly acknowledged fact in Cloud Continent. If one's Dantian was crippled, one's entire life would be ruined. This was an ironclad rule. However, as someone who had merged with the memories of Reincarnation Emperor Wu, Duan Lingtian did not care about this ironclad rule. According to Reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories, it was not impossible to repair a broken Dantian. At the very least, in Reincarnation Emperor Wu's memories, there were 2 ways to repair a broken Dantian. The first way was to find a legendary medicinal herb called the Immortal Spirit Herb. The Immortal Spirit Herb only existed in legends, and even Reincarnation Emperor Wu had only heard of it and had never seen it before. It was said that the Immortal Spirit Herb could even allow a person with a crippled body to regrow their limbs. Its medicinal strength could be said to be heaven-defying. The second way was to become a quasi-royal grade alchemist and refine the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill. The quasi-royal grade resurrection pill was a healing panacea that surpassed the grade 1 life recovery pill. In Cloud Continent, everyone only knew that the grade 1 life recovery pill was the best healing panacea. However, they did not know that Reincarnation Emperor Wu had long since refined the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill and the royal grade resurrection pill that were superior to the grade 1 life recovery pill. No matter how severe the injury was, as long as the heart did not stop beating, as long as the person consumed the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill, he could be saved. As for the royal grade resurrection pill, it was even more exaggerated. Even if the heart stopped beating, as long as it did not exceed an hour, the person could be saved with the royal grade resurrection pill. That Immortal Spirit Herb is too elusive and unrealistic. Looks like I can only help Xiong Quan repair his Dantian when I get to the foreign lands and obtain the great treasure that Reincarnation Emperor Wu left for his 3rd lifetime. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. The pile of treasures that Reincarnation Emperor Wu prepared for his 3rd lifetime included the quasi-royal grade resurrection pill and the royal grade resurrection pill. After galloping for a month, Duan Lingtian's group finally arrived at Xiong Quan's hometown. Xiong Quan's hometown was located within a group of mountains, and it was a remote mountain village. Xiong Quan, you grew up here? Duan Lingtian looked at the remote village before him and couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. It was difficult for him to imagine that Xiong Quan, the former guardian of the Boundless Sect, actually had such an ordinary background. Yes. Xiong Quan lightly smiled as he nodded, and he was slightly excited as he looked at the distant village. Duan Lingtian's group had just entered the village when someone noticed them. It's Uncle Xiong Quan. In next to no time, a 12 or 13-year-old youth with sharp eyes recognized Xiong Quan, and he cried out in surprise as he ran over. Uncle Xiong Quan, Uncle Xiong Quan. You are? Xiong Quan was stunned when he saw the youth that pounced into his embrace. Uncle Xiong Quan, don't you recognize me? I'm Arrow. The youth raised his head and looked at Xiong Quan with an excited expression. You're Arrow? Xiong Quan was stunned for a moment, and he couldn't help but laugh as he rubbed the youth's little head. Arrow, it's only been a few years and you've already grown so big. The youth laughed slyly. Uncle Xiong Quan, I was only 7 years old when you left last time. Is everyone in the village well? Xiong Quan asked. The youth hurriedly nodded. Everyone is well, it's just that I usually miss Uncle Xiong Quan. Humph, I want to be like Uncle Xiong Quan in the future and become an outstanding martial artist. I want to enter the Boundless Sect and become a grand guardian like Uncle Xiong Quan. The youth's naive and unaffected appearance caused Duan Lingtian, Li Fei, Zhang Shouyong, and Wang Qiong to be unable to refrain from laughing. Then you have to work hard. Xiong Quan smiled as he encouraged, yet a trace of loneliness flashed within the depths of his eyes. Xiong Quan. Uncle Xiong Quan. In next to no time, a group of people gushed out from the village, and they were incomparably enthusiastic. Looks like after Xiong Quan became the guardian of the Boundless Sect, he didn't forget his hometown. These villagers all respect him from the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 356. Xiong Quan relied on his own hard work to grow from a mountain kid to a guardian of the Boundless Sect. This was a surprising fact. Moreover, after Xiong Quan became a guardian of the Boundless Sect, he was still able to remember his origins and take care of his hometown. This was something that was extremely hard to come by. It was admirable. It was precisely because of this that Xiong Quan was able to obtain the acknowledgement of the group of villagers in his hometown. Because of Xiong Quan, the group of villagers loved the house and its crow, and Duan Lingtian's group received warm hospitality in the village as well. After staying in the village for a few days and enjoying the countryside life for a while, Duan Lingtian's group of 4 prepared to leave. Before leaving, Duan Lingtian went to find Xiong Quan. Xiong Quan, this is the antidote. In the future, you don't have to worry that the poison in your body will relapse every half a year. This antidote is sufficient to eradicate the poison in your body. Duan Lingtian withdrew a medicinal pill and passed it to Xiong Quan. At that time, for the sake of controlling Xiong Quan, he tampered with the grade 9 spirit-clearing pill he gave Xiong Quan to consume and added poison. It was a type of slow-acting poison, and so long as one didn't consume the antidote to alleviate the poison after half a year, one would die without a doubt. Now Duan Lingtian passed the antidote to eradicate the poison to Xiong Quan. Thank you, young master. Xiong Quan took a deep breath and consumed the medicinal pill, then said sincerely, Young master, in the future when Xiong Quan isn't by your side, you must take good care of yourself and protect yourself. Young master doesn't have to feel guilty about Xiong Quan's matter, everything is fate. Fate? Duan Lingtian shook his head. Xiong Quan, let me ask you, what is fate? Xiong Quan was speechless when he heard this. He didn't know how to explain. Xiong Quan, remember, you must not believe in the so-called fate. Now, although your Dantian is crippled, your advanced sword force is still present. Since you've opened the door of force, even if you don't have origin energy, you can similarly continue comprehending sword concept. Duan Lingtian slowly said to Xiong Quan. It's not important. Xiong Quan shook his head and smiled, looking extremely carefree. Without origin energy, so what if he comprehended sword concept? Only the sword in his hand was strong and his attacks were strong. In terms of speed, he was no different from an ordinary 9th level body tempering martial artist. Xiong Quan, I know that your Dantian has been destroyed and you've lost all hope. However, I still have to tell you that I have a way to repair your Dantian. Duan Lingtian said to Xiong Quan with a solemn expression. What? Xiong Quan was frightened by Duan Lingtian's words. He was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Young master, you said you have a way to repair my destroyed Dantian? Is that true? The current Xiong Quan was no longer as calm and carefree as before. He was so excited that he lost his composure. The reason why he had pretended to be like that earlier was because he didn't want Duan Lingtian to worry and feel guilty. In fact, his heart had never walked out of the shadow of his Dantian being crippled. Over the past few years, Duan Lingtian did not treat him as a slave because he controlled him with drugs. Instead, he treated him like family, which made him feel grateful. Now, even without the control of drugs, he still tried his best to think for Duan Lingtian. You've been with me for a few years, have I ever spoken empty words? Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised by Xiong Quan's excitement. If they could choose, no one would choose to become a cripple. Xiong Quan's face flushed red when he obtained confirmation, and he was extremely excited. However, even though I have a way to help you repair your Dantian, I'm afraid it will still take some time. At least 5 or 6 years, at most 8 or 9 years, or even over 10 years. Duan Lingtian poured a bucket of cold water on Xiong Quan when he saw him so excited. However, Xiongquan didn't mind and he grinned. Young master, I can wait. Duan Lingtian nodded and patted Xiongquan on the shoulder. Then I'll be leaving first. No need to send me off. Properly comprehend your advanced sword force. With your comprehension ability, comprehending sword concept isn't a difficult thing. I hope that when I see you next time, you've already comprehended sword concept. Young master, I will. I absolutely won't disappoint you. Xiongquan hurriedly nodded. Duan Lingtian smiled with satisfaction, then turned around and left to gather with Li Fei, Zhang Shouyong, and Wang Qiong before leaving this remote mountain range together. Scoundrel, are you still thinking about Xiongquan? Li Fei couldn't help but ask when she saw Duan Lingtian didn't speak all along the way. Duan Lingtian sighed. My responsibility for Xiongquan falling to such an end isn't small. Li Fei held Duan Lingtian's hand and consoled. Don't blame yourself, you were powerless at that time as well. That withered old man was too strong. But, Big Brother Zhang, killing that withered old man can be considered to have helped Xiongquan take revenge. Duan Lingtian nodded, then he looked at the young man on the other Fergana horse beside him. Big Brother Zhang, thank you. Zhang Shouyong shook his head and smiled. Brother Lingtian, you don't have to be courteous. That day when I saw you for the first time at Shenqian, I had a feeling of familiarity at first sight. The facts prove that our temperaments are compatible, and we're bound to become friends. Yeah. Wang Qiong, who sat in front of Zhang Shouyong, nodded as well. Little sister Li Fei and I hit it off at first sight as well, and I've taken her to be my own little sister in my heart. You're not allowed to bully her in the future. Otherwise, I'm not a match for you, but I can ask Brother Yong to help me teach you a lesson. As she finished speaking, Wang Qiong's tone had an extra sense of being protective. Then wouldn't I be eaten by this little girl for sure in the future? Duan Lingtian laughed exaggeratedly. Scoundrel, let's see if you dare bully me in the future. Wang Qiong's words caused Li Fei to beam with delight, and her beautiful face was filled with complacency. In the following days, Duan Lingtian's group of 4 didn't walk quickly, and they toured the scenery all along the way as they headed towards the 7-star sword sect. Something worthy of mentioning was, when they were about to arrive at Black Bamboo City, Duan Lingtian's cultivation broke through once more. 9th level of the Origin Core stage. Presently, I've broken through to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage, and my strength is comparable to the strength of 131 ancient mammoths. Compared to an ordinary 9th level Origin Core stage martial artist, I possess the strength of 11 ancient mammoths more. The third form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the WRM Python form, has finally attained perfection. The scope of effect of the quake energy has increased to the limit as well. So long as my opponent's strength doesn't exceed the strength of 100 ancient mammoths or more, I'm not afraid. Since he broke through, Duan Lingtian's mood had always been slightly surging. Lu Shirgo. Duan Lingtian's gaze flickered with cold lights, and a wisp of coldness appeared on the corners of his mouth. When we return this time, we should properly settle the debt you owe me. Lu Shirgu had heavily injured him that day and even knocked him out. He'd always been ashamed of this. He hoped that one day he'd be able to rely on his own strength to make Lu Shirgu repay it 10-fold, 100-fold. Now, although he hadn't broken through to the nascent soul stage, after his cultivation stepped into the 9th level of the Origin Core stage, he was already unafraid of an ordinary 1st-level nascent soul stage martial artist. So long as Lu Shirgu hasn't broken through to the 2nd level of the nascent soul stage, then with my current strength, it's sufficient to completely crush him. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart, and his eyes emitted a trace of yearning. After returning to his senses, Duan Lingtian smelled the fragrance of Li Fei's hair before him, and felt the strong wind that blew from his galloping horse, and his eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression was gentle like water. Presently, an entire year had already passed since he left the 7-star sword sect that day. This time, it wasn't only his cultivation that had broken through once more. Li Fei's cultivation had broken through half a month ago, breaking through to the 7th level of the Origin Core stage. Of course, the reason Li Fei's advancement was so swift and closely followed Duan Lingtian's footsteps was because she'd consumed the 10,000-year stalactite milk that day. Now, Li Fei's natural talent in the martial Dao was similar to Duan Lingtian, and they both arrived at the limit that a martial artist could attain. A year passed. Duan Lingtian was already 21 years old. Brother Lingtian, that city ahead is Black Bamboo City? Zhang Shouyong's gaze descended onto a small black dot in the distance as he slowly asked. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. He knew that arriving at Black Bamboo City also meant that they were about to part ways with Zhang Shouyong and his wife. All along the way he and Li Fei had formed a deep friendship with Zhang Shouyong and his wife. It was unavoidable that they were reluctant to part. Let's have a meal together after we arrive at Black Bamboo City. Zhang Shouyong looked at Duan Lingtian and Li Fei as he suggested. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei naturally had no objections. Little sister Li Fei, I'll surely come visit you with brother Yong when I'm free in the future. Wang Qiong spoke to Li Fei with a face filled with tender affection. Big sister Wang Qiong, I'll miss you. Li Fei's beautiful eyes faintly had traces of mist as she spoke in a light voice. Duan Lingtian consoled Li Fei. Alright, all good things must come to an end, be happy. Not to mention, it's not like we won't have the chance to meet again in the future. Besides that, we still have to eat together in a while. Big sister Wang Qiong will feel uncomfortable seeing you like this. Li Fei lightly nodded and squeezed out a trace of a forced smile on her face. During this half a year of time she and Wang Qiong felt like old friends at first sight and were close like sisters. Now that they were going to separate they were naturally extremely reluctant. The small black dot in the distance gradually grew larger. Finally it turned into a city. This city stood in the distance as if it had turned into a giant beast that swallowed the carriages and dragons in one gulp. After Duan Lingtian and the other three entered the city, they randomly found a restaurant and sat down by the window. Then it was time to order. Brother Lingtian, they seem to be looking at you? Suddenly, Duan Lingtian heard Zhang Shouyong's voice. Only then did Duan Lingtian realize that the group of guests in the restaurant were looking at him strangely. In fact, when he entered the city just now, he realized that some people looked at him as if they had seen money. Their eyes were shining and their faces were filled with greed. What's going on? Duan Lingtian had no idea what was going on. The Shi family mansion. Patriarch, I want to see the patriarch. An extremely fast figure dashed into the Shi family mansion and rushed all the way to the main hall of the Shi family mansion. Inside the Shi family hall. Recently, is there still no news of that Duan Lingtian? The old man in brocade clothes had a cold expression as he looked indifferently at the middle-aged man in front of him and asked. Chapter 357. Lord Xiaodou. Shirley had a bitter smile on his face. I asked someone to inquire about it at the Seven-Star Sword Sect. 1 year ago that Duan Lingtian left the Seven-Star Sword Sect and hasn't returned until now. Xiaodou. The vice president of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom's Jade Magnolia Trading Company. In existence at the 6th level of the Void Prying stage. Even if he was the Shi clan's patriarch, he didn't dare be disrespectful in the slightest before Xiaodou. After all, even their Shi clan only had a single Void Stage expert, and it was only a first-level Void Prying stage martial artist. If Hao wasn't killed by that Duan Lingtian, then with his natural talent he would surely be able to become the second Void Stage expert of my Shi clan. When he thought up to here, Shirley's face sank. You've already told me about this yesterday. Xiaodou glanced indifferently at Shirley. Have you found out where he went? Shirley shook his head. Not for now. Don't worry, Lord Xiaodou. That Duan Lingtian crippled my daughter's cultivation and even killed my son. I surely am absolutely irreconcilable with him. So long as I have news of him, I'll surely notify Lord Xiaodou at the first possible moment. Xiaodou's arrival allowed Shirley to see the hope of taking revenge. In the past, although he knew that his son Shi Hao was killed by Duan Lingtian, he didn't dare act rashly. Because Duan Lingtian was an outstanding disciple of the Seven-Star Sword Sect, and the Shi clan wouldn't allow him to take a risk for a personal enmity and bring a calamity to the Shi clan. However, some time ago, this vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, Xiaodou, held a portrait and came over in a threatening manner, allowing him to see hope. His daughter, Shi Yan, recognized with a glance that the young man in the portrait in Xiaodou's hand was precisely that Duan Lingtian. Thus, he invited Xiaodou into the Shi clan estate, plotting a grand scheme of revenge. Duan Lingtian, you deserve death. You actually dared to kill Lord Xiaodou's only son. Cold lights flickered within Shirley's eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. Patriarch, patriarch. Right at this moment, a figure rushed into the main hall without any prior notice. Xiaodou frowned when he saw the Shi clan disciples directly trespassing, and he grunted coldly. Patriarch Shirley, looks like the rules of your Shi clan aren't much. Could it be that anyone can casually trespass into this Shi clan audience hall? Shirley was a little embarrassed. He looked at the Shi family disciple and asked in a low voice, "Why are you in such a hurry?" Patriarch. The Shi family disciple said excitedly, "The person in the portrait has appeared." But just as Shi Li's pupils constricted, Xiaodou, who was sitting to the side and had just picked up a teacup to drink tea, suddenly trembled and crushed the teacup in his hand. Xiaodou stood up and looked at the Shi clan disciple as he shouted in shock, "You said the person in the portrait has appeared?" The Shi family disciple hurriedly nodded, "Yes, I saw him enter the city with my own eyes." Patriarch. Patriarch. At this moment, several figures flashed into the main hall. My cousin found the young man in the portrait in Quiet Elegance restaurant. My friend noticed it too. I saw it with my own eyes. These Shi family disciples were similar to the Shi family disciple from before. They had all come to inform the patriarch. Good. Xiaodou laughed loudly as an imposing aura soared from his body. Although he didn't intentionally extend it out, it still caused the Shi family disciples present to go ghastly pale and shiver. "Guang, father will go take revenge for you right now." Xiaodou's voice was like a thunderclap, and it shook the main hall to the point it seemed as if it was shaking. After eating and drinking their fill, Duan Lingtian's group of 4 left the restaurant and galloped their horses out of Black Bamboo City. On the way, Duan Lingtian's brows knit. His spiritual force told him that there were many people spying on him from the shadows and following him now. "Brother Lingtian, I've heard of the 7 great sword peaks of the 7-star sword sect as well. Qiong and I will send you to the entrance of the 7-star sword sect and take a look at the elegance of the 7 great sword peaks. How about it?" Zhang Shouyong looked at Duan Lingtian and lightly smiled as he spoke. "All right." Duan Lingtian nodded and lightly smiled, and his smile contained gratitude mixed within. He knew clearly in his heart. Zhang Shouyong had surely noticed the people following him, and that was why he made such a decision. "Then let's go slower. I still have to chat with big sister Wang Qiong, and I don't know when we'll meet again." Li Fei's beautiful eyes flashed and were suffused with a sheen of reluctance as she suggested. Duan Lingtian and Zhang Shouyong nodded. The group of 4 and 2 Fergana horses walked out of Black Bamboo City and headed directly towards the 7-star sword sect. Because of Li Fei's suggestion, Duan Lingtian and Zhang Shouyong intentionally slowed down their speed and didn't gallop wildly. Li Fei and Wang Qiong chatted to their heart's content before they left, and they laughed and talked to their heart's content. Black Bamboo City wasn't far from the 7-star sword sect, and even if they slowed down, Duan Lingtian's group of 4 had already traveled half the distance after half an hour. The 7-star sword sect really deserves its reputation. Zhang Shouyong looked at the 7 sword peaks that stood in the distance and couldn't help but praise. "I heard long ago that the 7-star sword sect has 7 great sword peaks, and it's a great spectacle in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Now that I've seen it today, it deserves its reputation." Wang Qiong nodded in deep agreement. Perhaps, any one of the 7 great sword peaks was inferior to the solitary peak near the ancient city of Everlast. However, when the 7 sword peaks gathered together and stood there for a long time, it brought about a kind of visual shock to others. The 7 great sword peaks were like 7 sharp swords that charged into the sky. It seemed as if they wanted to pierce 7 holes in the sky. Right at this moment. Thump, 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 thump. A string of dense sounds of horse hooves interrupted Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong, who were admiring the 7 sword peaks. Zhang Shouyong's face sank and a cold light flashed within his eyes. A trace of displeasure appeared on Wang Qiong's beautiful face as well. When Duan Lingtian and Zhang Shouyong turned their horses around, they could see over 10 tall horses dashing over with the 3 Fergana horses in the lead, and their target was directly at them. "Halt! Halt!" In next to no time, the people that sat on the over 10 tall horses surrounded Duan Lingtian's group of 4, and they seemed to have transformed into a heaven-encompassing net that caused Duan Lingtian's group of 4 to have no place to escape. "Shi Yan." Li Fei's gaze was sharp, and she noticed the young woman following by the side of the dignified middle-aged man with a glance. The young woman's features were warped and savage, and her triangular eyes flickered with a gloomy sheen. It was precisely the former 7-star sword sect's Alcade Peak disciple, Shi Yan. The Shi Yan that had her cultivation crippled by Duan Lingtian. The younger sister of the former number 1 disciple in the 7-star sword sect's outer court, Shi Yan. "Bitch." Shi Yan looked at Li Fei, and her triangular eyes emitted frightening icy coldness. "Today you and your man will die. Crippling my cultivation and killing my brother, none of you can escape." Shi Yan's voice was filled with gloomy coldness. Clean your mouth. Wang Qiong's beautiful face went grim when she heard Shi Yan insulting Li Fei, and she said in a low voice, "What does me insulting this bitch have to do with you?" Shi Yan glanced coldly at Wang Qiong and grunted. "You and your man can only blame yourselves for being unlucky today actually walking together with these two jinxes. All of you are bound to be dragged down by them. You mean you want to kill the four of us?" Zhang Shouyong, who sat behind Wang Qiong, had a calm expression as he asked indifferently. Right when Shi Yan intended to speak. "Exactly, all three of you will be buried with this Duanling Tian today." An aged voice that contained extreme coldness and indifference sounded out, and it was an old man in embroidered clothes that sat on a Fergana horse that spoke. Presently, this group of people seemed to have taken this old man as their leader. This person? Duanling Tian looked at the old man in embroidered clothes and frowned, as he kept having the feeling that the old man was slightly familiar, but he could be sure that he'd never seen this old man before. If he'd seen him before, it would be impossible for him to not have any impression of him. Relying on his formidable spiritual force and the lifetime experience of Samsara Emperor Wu, Duanling Tian was able to discern that the old man's cultivation ought to be at the 6th level of the void prying stage. Zhang Shouyong's calm face sank slightly when he heard the old man. A void prying stage martial artist dared talk nonsense before him? Duanling Tian. Meanwhile, the dignified middle-aged man by Shi Yan's side glared angrily at Duanling Tian and said coldly, "You first crippled my daughter's cultivation, then killed my son, Shi Hao. Today I surely will make your blood splatter on the spot." "You're Shi Hao's father?" Duanling Tian glanced indifferently at the dignified middle-aged man, then his gaze descended onto the old man in embroidered clothes. "You're taking revenge for Shi Hao as well?" "Duanling Tian, this is Lord Xiaodou. Lord Xiaodou is the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. I truly never imagined that you actually dared kill Lord Xiaodou's son. You're simply audacious to the extreme." The old man in embroidered clothes hadn't spoken when Shirley had already sneered. "Jade Magnolia Trading Company's vice president? Xiaodou?" Duanling Tian frowned, and he seemed to have heard of it somewhere. "Scoundrel, Black Wind City," Li Fei reminded. Duanling Tian came to a sudden understanding as he recalled. At that time, when he'd just left the Crimson Sky Kingdom's Imperial City and passed by Black Wind City at the border between the Crimson Sky Kingdom and the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, he'd participated in an auction. After the auction ended, there was once a person who spied on the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse he'd won. Later on, that person and the two old men by his side were all killed by Xiong Quan. That person seemed to be the person in charge of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company in Black Wind City. "You're Xia Guang's father?" Duanling Tian looked at the old man in embroidered clothes, as he clearly remembered the name of that person from that day. "Exactly, I'm Xia Guang's father, Xiaodou." Xiaodou's gaze was exceedingly icy cold and contained boundless killing intent. "Looks like you still remember my son that was killed by you. I've searched for you for an entire year and finally found clues related to you in Black Bamboo City. Looks like even the heavens want me to take revenge for my son." As he finished speaking, Xiaodou's face flushed red and he was extremely excited. He stared at Duanling Tian with a gaze as if he was looking at a dead person. "Xiaodou, you're the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company at any rate. Could it be that you don't want to know why I killed your son that day?" Duanling Tian looked at Xiaodou and asked with a low voice. At that time, if it wasn't for Xia Guang arousing covetous intentions towards the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse in his possession and colluding with the members of the Ma clan auction house to kill them and seize the infant jade-eyed heavenly mouse, he wouldn't have asked Xiong Quan to kill Xia Guang. As far as he was concerned, all of this was something Xia Guang brought upon himself. Chapter 358. Xiaodou grunted coldly when he heard Duanling Tian, then said with a gloomy face, "I don't care why you killed my son. I only know that no matter who it is, if you dare kill my son, then you must be prepared to pay with blood. Even if the heavenly emperor kills my son, I Xiaodou will tear him apart. Even if your son was in the wrong, even if your son aroused killing intent first. You don't care? Don't you think that you didn't teach your son well?" Duanling Tian looked at Xiaodou with a gaze that went slightly colder. "Yes." Cold lights flickered within Xiaodou's eyes as he said with a grim voice, "Even if my son commits all sorts of crimes, no one can touch him. Because he's the son of Xiaodou, the son of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company's vice president." "Ha!" Duan Lingtian couldn't help but laugh loudly when he heard Xiaodou. As expected, like son like father. He's the son of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company's vice president. Could it be that his life is more precious than the lives of others? Of course. In my eyes, my son's life is priceless. As for others, at least you, Duan Lingtian's life in the eyes of Xiaodou, is no different than lowly grass. Xiaodou's voice contained traces of ruthlessness mixed within. No different than lowly grass? Duan Lingtian's eyes flashed with a cold light. If he had the strength to kill Xiaodou now, he wouldn't hesitate in the slightest to kill Xiaodou. Do you really think that the life of your son is precious, but the lives of others aren't? No different than lowly grass. Zhang Shouyong looked at Xiaodou and shouted coldly. Presently, the eyes of this young man with a calm expression had an additional trace of rage. Who do you think you are to dare be presumptuous before Lord Xiaodou? The Shi clan's patriarch Shi Li's face sank. He, who intended to show off in front of Xiaodou, pushed off from his horse and his entire body seemed to have transformed into a bolt of lightning that flashed towards Zhang Shouyong. Whoosh! At the same time that Shi Li flashed out, 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared out of thin air in the sky. Half-step void stage. When they saw Shi Li shout out explosively before charging towards Zhang Shouyong, Duan Lingtian was stunned. Li Fei was stunned as well. In their opinion, Shi Li was simply courting death. A half-step void realm expert was considered strong in their eyes, but in Big Brother Zhang's eyes, he was no different from an ant. After all, even a first-level void initiation stage expert like Withered Old Man was killed by Zhang Shouyong in the blink of an eye. A mere half-step void stage martial artist that hadn't even stepped into the void prying stage was utterly not worth mentioning before Zhang Shouyong. Like a bolt of lightning, a spiritual saber suddenly appeared in Shi Li's hand. Saber light swirled around it. Resplendent and gorgeous. For a time, another 400-plus ancient mammoth silhouettes appeared beside the 1,500 ancient mammoth silhouettes above Shi Li. A 7th-grade spirit saber. Shi Li's hand trembled. In the blink of an eye. The Grade 7 spirit saber in Shi Li's hand instantly transformed into saber rays that filled the sky, forming a saber net that swept toward Zhang Shouyong in an imposing manner. Wang Qiong, who was in front of Zhang Shouyong, had become his first target. If he wanted to injure Zhang Shouyong, then he must first deal with Wang Qiong, this obstacle. Although Wang Qiong's cultivation was only at the 9th level of the body tempering stage and didn't possess the slightest origin energy, she didn't have the slightest trace of fear when facing the saber net that was formed from saber lights that filled the sky that accompanied Shi Li. Her expression was calm, as if she utterly didn't take the scene before her seriously, because she knew that she had a formidable backer by her side. So long as this backer was here, she would be fine. This Shi Li is dead for sure. When he saw Shi Li make a move against Wang Qiong, Duan Lingtian had already sentenced Shi Li to death in his heart. Just like how Li Fei was his reverse scale. Wang Qiong was similarly Zhang Shouyong's reverse scale. This Shi Li actually dared make a move against Wang Qiong? He was simply courting death. As if it was reflecting Duan Lingtian's thoughts, Zhang Shouyong, who sat behind Wang Qiong, had a gloomy expression at the instant Shi Li made a move and executed saber lights that filled the sky that swept towards Wang Qiong. You're courting death. Zhang Shouyong's cold voice carried along frightening killing intent as it entered into the ears of everyone present, and it caused everyone to feel a chill run down their spines. In the next moment, swoosh, everyone only heard an ear-piercing howl of the wind, and it was accompanied by a string of explosions that were like thunderclaps. At practically the exact same moment. Bang! Everyone clearly saw that the body of Shi Li, who charged over menacingly, stopped in midair, and in the blink of an eye, it exploded, causing blood and flesh to fly out in all directions, and not a single complete piece of his body could be seen. Obviously, he'd been struck by an extremely terrifying force. Silence. The scene was deathly silent. At this moment, including the Magnolia Trading Company's vice president, Xiaodou, the group of people that surrounded Duan Lingtian's group of 4 seemed as if their throats were tightly gripped by someone, and their faces flushed red. Numerous pairs of eyes contained a sheen of extreme astonishment mixed within. An existence at the half-step void stage was directly blasted to death in an instant before they had the time to react? Duan Lingtian looked at this scene calmly, and he wasn't surprised in the slightest. What a joke. This Big Brother Zhang was a formidable existence at the 2nd level of the void initiation stage. A mere half-step void stage martial artist dared be presumptuous before Big Brother Zhang? He was simply courting death. Li Fei's beautiful face was slightly pale, and she was terrified by Zhang Shouyong's ability. Although she didn't clearly see how Zhang Shouyong attacked, she saw the scene of Shirley's body being blasted apart by the terrifying force. Shirley didn't even have the time to let out a shrill cry when he was killed. Everything happened too quickly. Quickly to the point it caused one to be shocked. Father. Shi Yin looked at the incomplete corpses that covered the ground, and her body lightly trembled as her triangular eyes flickered with despair and astonishment, and she had an expression of disbelief. Her father died just like that? No. Impossible. For a time Shi Yin was slightly dazed, whereas the others were jolted awake by Shi Yin now. Numerous sounds of cold air being inhaled rose and fell, and it set off the atmosphere at the scene to be slightly oppressive. Even Xiado, the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company and in existence at the 6th level of the Void Prying stage, had traces of fear in his eyes when he looked at Zhang Shouyong now. He was utterly unable to clearly see how this young man attacked earlier. Too swift. Swift to the point his eyes were unable to catch sight of it. Xiado understood that this was a dangerous figure. Xiaodo's heart sank and he looked at Zhang Shouyong and cupped his hands. Sir, I'm the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, Xiado. Today is a personal enmity between me and this Duanling Tian, so I hope that you don't interfere. I, Xiado, and even the entire Jade Magnolia Trading Company owe you a favor. Now Xiado used the Jade Magnolia Trading Company to pressure Zhang Shouyong, and he wanted to make Zhang Shouyong have misgivings and retreat in the face of difficulties. As far as Xiado was concerned, the Jade Magnolia Trading Company still had a certain degree of pressure in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. But unfortunately Xiado was bound to be disappointed. Jade Magnolia Trading Company? Duanling Tian knew Xiaodo's intentions when he heard Xiado, and he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Could it be that Xiado thinks that Big Brother Zhang would be afraid of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company behind him? Moreover, Xiado. Duanling Tian looked at Xiado, and the corners of his mouth held a ridiculing smile. A vice president like you dares to threaten to represent the entire Jade Magnolia Trading Company? Laughable. You. Xiaodo's face sank as cold lights shot out from his eyes, and he wished for nothing more than to directly kill Duanling Tian. However, the young man that caused him to be extremely fearful had yet to state his position. No matter how much he hated Duanling Tian, he could only grit his teeth and endure it, not daring to make a move. The young man's strength was too terrifying. According to his estimations, the young man was at least at the 7th level of the Void Prying stage or above. It was far from something he could compare to. Finally, Zhang Shouyong gave Xiado a reply and he grunted coldly. Right when Xiado didn't know what Zhang Shouyong meant, he saw Zhang Shouyong move, vanishing on the Fergana horse into thin air. In the next moment, an ear-piercing and awe-inspiring howl of the wind swept out in all directions. He was able to vaguely see that there were 3 enormous silhouettes flying and moving in the sky, and in the blink of an eye, they made a circle in the sky. When these 3 enormous silhouettes entered into Zhang Shouyong's eyes, it caused his face to become exceedingly ghastly pale. Second level of the Void Initiation stage. As a 6th level Void Prying stage martial artist, he was able to clearly sense that this young man hadn't exerted his concept, and he'd only purely utilized his origin energy to mobilize his strength, the strength of 3 ancient horned dragons. This was the symbol of a 2nd level Void Initiation stage martial artist. This young man was a Void Initiation stage martial artist. Whoosh. It was like a gust of wind blew past, and in the blink of an eye, Zhang Shouyong appeared before Xiado. Whereas now, besides Xiado and Shi Yin, not a single one of the other 10+ people were still alive. All of them were killed by Zhang Shouyong. From the moment Zhang Shouyong made a move until he appeared before the old man, it only took the time of a single breath. In the time of a single breath, he swept out in all directions and killed over 10 people. Zhang Shouyong used his actions to illustrate how terrifying a Void Initiation stage martial artist was. So strong. Duanling Tian took a deep breath, and his eyes contained slight yearning mixed within, yearning towards the Void Initiation stage. No. No. Meanwhile, the nearby Shi Yin, who was dumbstruck, finally recovered from her shock, and as she looked at the corpses that covered the ground, her face went ghastly pale as her legs went weak and she collapsed to the ground. Her triangular eyes flickered with boundless astonishment and despair. The reason she'd appeared here today was because she wanted to see Duanling Tian being killed with her own 2 eyes. She'd even decided in her heart that once Duan Lingtian was killed by the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company, she would tear Duan Lingtian's corpse into pieces, as only in this way would she be able to vent the hatred in her heart. But now, all of this was bound to become her fantasy. What? Why is it like this? What? Why does this Duan Lingtian have such a formidable backer by his side? Why? The heavens are unfair, the heavens are unfair. Shi Yin clenched her fists tightly, and her triangular eyes flickered with unwillingness. Her twisted and sinister facial features were now completely twisted together. You said you wanted to kill my brother earlier? Zhang Shouyang's gaze descended onto Xiado as he asked with a calm tone. Chapter 359. Sir, who exactly are you? Xiado took a deep breath and looked at Zhang Shouyang as he asked. Subsequently, he suppressed the terror in his heart and slowly said, perhaps the clan or sect you're from has some relationship with our Jade Magnolia Trading Company. His words had an additional intention of admitting defeat. Jade Magnolia Trading Company? The corners of Zhang Shouyang's mouth curled into a wisp of disdain as he said indifferently, sorry, I've never heard of it. Never heard of it? Xiaodo's face instantly flushed red as if someone had choked him. He naturally thought that Zhang Shouyang said this intentionally. Although the Jade Magnolia Trading Company couldn't be considered to be the top trading company in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, it was renowned far and wide. Duan Lingtian wasn't surprised. According to his knowledge, although Zhang Shouyang had stayed in the ancient city of Everlast for a few years, besides having some understanding of the 7 great sects of the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom, Zhang Shouyang hadn't paid attention to the other powers. Suddenly, whoosh! In the sky above Zhang Shouyang, 3 ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared once more, spiraling down as they bared their fangs and brandished their claws, and they brought an extremely oppressive feeling to others. Xiaodo's face went ghastly pale when he saw this scene, and his eyes emitted terror. Since you said repeatedly that you want to kill my brother, then I'll send you on your way first and remove any worries for my brother. Zhang Shouyang spoke word by word, and every word he spat out seemed to have transformed into a heavy hammer that smashed onto Xiaodo's chest, causing Xiaodo's face to go even more ghastly pale. In the end, it completely shattered Xiaodo's will. Thump. Xiaodo's body crashed down and actually knelt on the ground, then he lowered his noble head and said with a slightly trembling voice, Sir, spare me. I was only joking earlier. That unfilial son of mine actually dared offend Sir, your brother? He deserves to die 100 times. Sir, it's I who didn't teach my son well, it's I who didn't teach my son well. The current Xiado didn't have the arrogance of a 6th-level void-prying stage martial artist as the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company. The current him was like a dog that wagged its tail and begged for mercy. Before death, he'd completely abandoned his dignity. Just for the sake of surviving. Vice President Xiado, you didn't say that earlier? A wisp of a ridiculing smile appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth, and he looked down upon Xiado from the bottom of his heart. A dignified 6th-level void-prying stage martial artist, the vice president of the Jade Magnolia Trading Company for the sake of survival, had given up the dignity a martial artist ought to possess as a person. Such a person was pathetic. Brother Duan, I was just joking with you, just joking with you. Really? When Xiado heard Duan Lingtian's words, he suppressed the flames of rage that were on the verge of bursting out from the depths of his heart and spoke hurriedly. Joking? Duan Lingtian's gaze was slightly cold. Soon after, he strangely smiled, since Vice President Xiado likes to joke so much. Big Brother Zhang, I think you can joke with Vice President Xiado. I think Vice President Xiado won't mind. Vice President Xiado, right? Yes. Xiado hurriedly nodded. At this moment, how could he dare say no? When Zhang Shouyang heard Duan Lingtian's words, he understood Duan Lingtian's intentions, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up into a smile. Vice President Xiado, right? Zhang Shouyang asked indifferently. My lord, just call me Xiado, just call me Xiado. Xiado had an expression of panic and lost composure. You like to joke, right? Zhang Shouyang asked again. I do. Xiado hurriedly nodded and didn't dare hesitate. Very good. Zhang Shouyang nodded, then he raised his hand and pressed it down on Xiaodo's head. At the same time that Xiaodo's body shivered, Zhang Shouyang slowly said, Then I'll joke with you. See if I can make your head explode by slightly urging my origin energy. Xiaodou was already trembling with fear, and when he heard Zhang Shouyong, he lost his composure and directly fell limp on the ground. Then he said with a trembling voice, "Spare me, my lord, spare me. I can't take this joke, I can't take it." Zhang Shouyong's gaze went cold and he lost the intention to continue teasing Xiaodou, and the origin energy on his right hand skyrocketed. Oh. Xiaodou's gaze was sharp and just happened to see this scene, causing his face to go grim. His limbs pushed off from the ground as his figure shook, and he seemed to have transformed into an eagle that flashed out with the intention of fleeing. In the sky, 8,000 ancient mammoth silhouettes dashed out along with him. But would he be able to flee? Want to flee? The corners of Zhang Shouyong's mouth curled into a cold smile, and in practically an instant, a layer of earthen yellow light barrier appeared on the surface of his body. In the sky above him, 6 ancient horned dragon silhouettes competed to dance as they appeared. Swoosh. In the eyes of Duan Lingtian, Zhang Shouyong's entire body had instantly fused into one with the earth and vanished on the spot. At the same time that Zhang Shouyong, who'd utilized his third-level earth concept, vanished before the eyes of Duan Lingtian, he'd appeared over 10 meters away and easily obstructed Xiaodou, who intended to flee. Bang! Zhang Shouyong's palm descended, his origin energy skyrocketed, and the edges of his origin energy faintly contained traces of an earthen yellow glow. Obviously, Zhang Shouyong had utilized his third-level earth concept in this palm strike. Bang! The palm strike that contained the strength of 6 ancient horned dragons descended onto Xiaodou's chest, and it emitted an enormous bang. Instantly, Xiaodou followed in the footsteps of the Shi clan's patriarch, Shi Li, and his body exploded apart to transform into incomplete corpses that covered the sky and scattered everywhere. He was deader than dead. Shi Yan. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian heard a delicate shout sound out by his ears, and subsequently, Li Fei, who sat before him, flashed out. Only now did Duan Lingtian notice that Shi Yan actually wanted to flee as well. Swish. Li Fei's figure flashed out gracefully and caught up to Shi Yan in the blink of an eye, and the 3-foot-long blade in her hand pierced through Shi Yan's back and passed through her body. Li Fei's gaze was extremely calm when she saw Shi Yan die before her eyes. Shi Yan deserved death. The 10+ people that came menacingly earlier were now scattered all over the place, and all of them were dead. I just happened to return that Fergana horse to all of you. Zhang Shouyong spoke as he pulled over the 2 Fergana horses that were his spoils of the battle, and he and Wang Qiong each sat on one. Meanwhile, Duan Lingtian and Li Fei rode on the 2 Fergana horses as well. The 4 of them headed towards the 7-star sword sect together. The incident that occurred earlier didn't affect the mood of Duan Lingtian's group of 4, and the 4 of them chatted and laughed all along the way as they rode the Fergana horses forward slowly. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Unknowingly, the 4 of them had arrived at the foot of the 7-star sword sect's main peak, Dubhe Peak. Outside the 7-star sword sect. Brother Ling Tian's sister-in-law will meet again someday. Zhang Shouyong lightly smiled to Duan Lingtian and Li Fei as he bid his farewells. We'll meet again someday. Duan Lingtian nodded with a smile. Big sister Wang Qiong, if you and big brother Zhang are free in the future, you must come see me. Li Fei looked at Wang Qiong with a reluctant expression. Of course. Wang Qiong lightly nodded, and her eyes contained reluctance mixed within. Duan Lingtian and Li Fei withdrew their gazes when they saw Zhang Shouyong and Wang Qiong's figures vanish before them. Then they turned their horses around and headed towards the stable behind the sect. The 2 of them had only just entered the stable when they saw a young man come over to greet them. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, senior sister Li Fei. It was precisely Mou. After not seeing him for a year, Mou had matured quite a bit. Mou, you've broken through to the 3rd level of the Origin Core stage? Duan Lingtian glanced at Mou with a surprised expression. I remember that you were only at the 1st level of the Origin Core stage a year ago. How did you improve so quickly? Senior brother Duan Lingtian. You're able to discern my cultivation? Mou was dumbstruck. Senior brother Duan Lingtian was covered in dust and had obviously just returned from outside, so it was impossible for him to know his current cultivation beforehand. In other words, senior brother Duan Lingtian was able to discern it. Duan Lingtian gave Mou a mysterious smile, then descended from the horse and helped Li Fei down. Then he said to Mou, I'll leave our horses to you. Take this, it's a small token of my appreciation. As Duan Lingtian spoke, he withdrew a large stack of silver. An entire 1 million silver was passed over to Mou. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, I can't accept this. Mou shook his head and laughed foolishly. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Mou, then asked curiously. Aren't you taking care of the horses here and acting as a coachman for the sake of getting a little more salary? This money is sufficient to cover your salary for many years of working here, why don't you want it? Mou rubbed the back of his head. My mother told me that I have to rely on my own hard work to earn money. I don't accept a reward that's not deserved. Take it, just treat it as your salary for helping us take care of the Fergana horses. Duan Lingtian continued. Seeing that Mou still didn't accept it, he immediately glared. If you don't accept it, then you're looking down on me. Seeing that Duan Lingtian had spoken to this extent, Mou could only accept it with a face full of gratitude. Thank you, senior brother Duan Lingtian. Your talent is not bad, work hard. I hope to see the day when you shine. Duan Lingtian nodded and smiled at Mou, then he held Li Fei's hand and left the stable, following the mountain path towards Dubhe Peak. Senior brother Duan Lingtian, I definitely won't let you down. Grasping the silver in his hand, Mou's face was solemn, and his gaze was firm as iron. Little Fei, let's go back. I've abducted you for over a year, Elder Bai is surely anxious. You've been on the road for half a day and you're tired, have a good rest. Duan Lingtian sent Li Fei to the side of the chain bridge that led to Alcade Peak, then helped Li Fei comb her beautiful hair as he spoke gently. Okay. Li Fei nodded meekly, then stepped onto the chain bridge and slowly left. Duan Lingtian withdrew his gaze when he saw Li Fei's figure vanishing before his eyes. He didn't return to Migra's Peak but instead headed towards the peak of Dubhe Peak. Some things had to be faced sooner or later. Lu Shirgo. A wisp of coldness appeared on the corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth. After arriving at the trade hall at the peak of Dubhe Peak, Duan Lingtian didn't notice Lu Shiji's whereabouts, so he walked towards an inner court disciple and asked. Senior brother, do you know where Lu Shiji's place of cultivation is? This inner court disciple turned around, and his pupils constricted when he saw Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian. He obviously recognized Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian lightly smiled. The inner court disciple took a deep breath. When Duan Lingtian was heavily injured and knocked unconscious by Lu Shigu, he was present as well. Now, after Duan Lingtian vanished without a trace for a year, he took the initiative to look for Lu Shigu. His goal was obvious. To take revenge on Lu Shigu. Chapter 360. Duan Lingdan. The inner court disciple hadn't finished speaking when his pupils abruptly constricted, and his gaze descended behind Duan Lingtian, as if he'd seen something that caused him to be terrified. Subsequently, he didn't wait for Duan Lingtian to react and hurriedly walked away. It was as if staying by Duan Lingtian's side for a moment longer would cause him to suffer some sort of calamity. The inner court disciple's actions caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned, and then he turned around. When his gaze moved to the distance, he noticed two people were ascending the peak of Dubhe Peak side by side. Lu Shigu. I really didn't waste any effort. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a cold smile. The people that appeared before him now were precisely Lu Shigu and Fan Jian. Meanwhile, Lu Shigu and Fan Jian noticed Duan Lingtian as well, and after they approached, Lu Shiji's eyes emitted piercingly cold lights as he said with a cold and indifferent voice, Duan Lingtian. In this past year he hadn't heard any news related to Duan Lingtian, and knew that Duan Lingtian was still outside and hadn't returned to the Seven-Star Sword sect. The more it was like this, the more uneasy he felt in his heart. He was worried that Duan Lingtian had stayed outside for too long, and when he returned, Duan Lingtian's cultivation would have far surpassed his. After all, Duan Lingtian's natural talent was there for all to see. After another 2 or 3 years, Duan Lingtian would have matured, and it would be impossible for him to be a match for Duan Lingtian. Now, when he saw Duan Lingtian had returned, at the same time that he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, killing intent towards Duan Lingtian arose once more, as far as he was concerned. Only by killing Duan Lingtian would he be able to have no worries. Lu Shigu. When faced with Lu Shiji's provocation, Duan Lingtian wasn't outdone, and his eyes emitted a frightening cold light. He'd ascended the peak of Dubhe Peak today precisely for the sake of looking for Lu Shigu. Now, Lu Shigu had walked right into his trap and allowed him to save some effort. Humph. Duan Lingtian, you were seriously injured and knocked unconscious by my big brother Lu last time. How dare you be so arrogant in front of my big brother Lu today? Fan Jian sneered, pretending to be someone else. Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian calmly swept a glance at Fan Jian, a mischievous smile dancing in his eyes. Do you think that with this Lu Shigu around, I can't do anything to you? Fan Jian's expression changed slightly. He couldn't help but take 2 steps back, afraid that Duan Lingtian would suddenly attack him. Duan Lingtian was about to make fun of Fan Jian. His sensitive psychic power suddenly trembled. He discovered that Lu Shigu had once again launched a sneak attack on him. Lu Shiji's entire person seemed to have transformed into a gust of wind, sweeping over. Duan Lingtian's gaze turned slightly cold. His face sank and his legs trembled as he barely dodged Lu Shiji's palm. Whoosh! Lu Shiji's palm practically brushed past Duan Lingtian's clothes as it flashed past. Duan Lingtian, your natural talent is indeed not bad. It's only been a year, yet you've actually already broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage. A wisp of a strange smile appeared on the corners of Lu Shiji's mouth as he gazed at the 120 ancient mammoth silhouettes that appeared above Duan Lingtian. His sneak attack from before was only for the sake of probing Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Duan Lingtian to dodge. Do you think everyone is like you, not improving in the slightest after a year has passed? Duan Lingtian said in disdain. 9th level of the origin core stage. The commotion caused by the conflict between Duan Lingtian and Lu Shigu was great. In next to no time, the crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples near the trade hall at the peak of Dubhe Peak all gathered around to watch the show. It's that Duan Lingtian. This Duan Lingtian has vanished without a trace for a year, and he's finally come out. This Duan Lingtian has actually broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage. His natural talent is truly monstrous. Yeah, with such natural talent, it wouldn't be difficult for him to surpass senior brother Lu Shigu in another year or 2. Looks like senior brother Lu Shigu has really brought great trouble upon himself. The crowd of inner court disciples whispered in discussion. As far as they were concerned, so long as Duan Lingtian didn't ascend the life and death arena and properly cultivated for another year or 2 at that time, he would absolutely be able to easily crush Lu Shigu. Now he was still slightly lacking. When the inner court disciples' words entered into Lu Shiji's ears, it caused Lu Shiji's face to sink, and his eyes had cold lights that were awe-inspiring. What he was most worried about was this. Duan Lingtian. Lu Shiji's ghastly gaze descended onto Duan Lingtian, and he said in a low voice, I've long since heard that your ability to defeat someone stronger than you is not bad. Now that you've broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage, I presume you wouldn't even be afraid of a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist, right? When he heard Lu Shigu, Duan Lingtian said indifferently, a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist. I don't know about others, but I'm naturally not afraid of you, Lu Shigu. Good. Lu Shigu started laughing arrogantly and willfully. Since it's like this, then do you, Duan Lingtian, dare to ascend the life and death arena and fight to the death with me, Lu Shigu? Life and death arena? As soon as Lu Shigu said this, the surrounding crowd of inner court disciples burst into an uproar. Duan Lingtian's brows raised. Why do I have to ascend the life and death arena with you? Lu Shigu frowned, then took a step forward and provoked coldly. What? You, Duan Lingtian, the renowned genius in the martial Tao of our 7-star sword sect, the genius in the martial Tao that's able to defeat someone stronger than you. Now that you've broken through to the 9th level of the origin core stage, you still don't dare ascend the life and death arena to battle me, a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist? Earlier, who was it that said he wasn't afraid of me, a first-level nascent soul stage martial artist? What? Now that you heard I'm inviting you to ascend the life and death arena to battle, you're afraid? As he looked at Duan Lingtian, whose expression became even more unsightly, the mocking smile on the corners of Lu Shiji's mouth grew even wider. Looks like some people are only formidable with their mouths. At the critical moment, they're instead terrified. Big brother Lu, besides being formidable with his mouth, what else is formidable about this Duan Lingtian? What rare genius in the martial Tao of the 7-star sword sect? As far as I'm concerned, he's utterly trash that isn't worth mentioning. Fan Jian cooperated with Lu Shigu in a timely manner and trampled on Duan Lingtian's dignity. Fan Jian. Duan Lingtian's eyes seemed as if they could emit flames as he looked at Fan Jian and said in a cold voice, You said I'm only formidable with my mouth? Alright. I, Duan Lingtian, the trash in your eyes, invite you to ascend the life and death arena to battle. Do you dare? Duan Lingtian's words caused the inner court disciples present to look at Fan Jian with strange expressions. Yeah. Yu Fanjian said that Duan Lingtian is only formidable with his mouth, but is incapable in other aspects and is trash. Now Duan Lingtian invites you to ascend the life and death arena to battle. Do you dare? Duan Lingtian's words caused Fanjian to be stunned. Not to mention that Duan Lingtian had already broken through to the 9th level of the Origin Core stage now. Even if it was Duan Lingtian who hadn't broken through a year ago, Fanjian knew that he wasn't a match for Duan Lingtian. How could he dare accept Duan Lingtian's life and death arena agreement? What? You don't dare? The gaze Duan Lingtian looked at Fanjian had an additional sense of disdain and contempt. You Fanjian keep saying that besides having a formidable mouth, I'm incapable in other aspects, and even said that I, Duan Lingtian, am trash. Now you don't even dare accept the life and death arena agreement of this trash. Are you telling everyone present that you, Fanjian, are inferior to even trash? You, Fanjian, are inferior to even trash. When Duan Lingtian's words entered into Fanjian's ears, it caused Fanjian's face to flush red, and he gnashed his teeth. He wished for nothing more than to directly accept Duan Lingtian's life and death arena agreement and ascend the life and death arena to battle Duan Lingtian. In the end, his reason still prevailed over his impulse. When he noticed the gazes of the surrounding crowd of inner court disciples that became stranger and stranger, Fanjian sneered. Duan Lingtian, don't change the topic. Today it was Big Brother Lu who first invited you to ascend the life and death arena to battle. If you dare accept Big Brother Lu's life and death arena agreement, then so what if I, Fanjian, accept your life and death arena agreement? As expected, Fanjian's words drew a wave of disdain from the crowd. Fanjian is too shameless. He clearly knows that it's impossible for Duan Lingtian to be a match for senior brother Lu Shige, yet he's still instigating Duan Lingtian to accept senior brother Lu Shige's life and death arena agreement. Exactly, once Duan Lingtian agrees to senior brother Lu Shige's life and death arena agreement, the one that dies will surely be Duan Lingtian. Even if he agrees to Duan Lingtian's life and death arena agreement, but at that time, it would be impossible for Duan Lingtian to survive. In the end, he utterly doesn't have to ascend the life and death arena to battle Duan Lingtian. If I was Duan Lingtian, I'd request to ascend the life and death arena to battle Fanjian before battling Lu Shige. Let's see if Fanjian dares. The crowd of 7-star sword sect inner court disciples discussed animatedly. What? Duan Lingtian, weren't you extremely arrogant and conceited earlier? You don't dare? Fanjian disregarded the discussions in the surroundings and used a mocking gaze to stare at Duan Lingtian as he provoked. Fanjian. Duan Lingtian sneered. I can agree to your request. But I heard an inner court senior brother's suggestion earlier, and it's not bad. So long as you agree to my life and death arena agreement, I can agree to Lu Shige's life and death arena agreement. But I, Duan Lingtian, want to ascend the life and death arena to battle you, Fanjian. After our battle, I'll ascend the life and death arena to battle Lu Shige. Duan Lingtian glanced deeply at Fanjian. Fanjian's face sank as he glared at the inner court disciple that gave the suggestion, then his gaze once again descended onto Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, don't forget, it's Big Brother Lu that invited you to ascend the life and death arena to battle today. As they say, first come first serve. I, Fanjian, won't compete with Big Brother Lu. Ha! Duan Lingtian couldn't help but laugh loudly. Fanjian, I, Duan Lingtian, have seen many shameless people in my entire life, but I've never seen someone as shameless as you. Before you they aren't even worthy to carry your shoes. Duan Lingtian's words that seemed to be praise instead caused Fanjian to feel it to be incomparably ear-piercing when it entered Fanjian's ears. The surrounding crowd of inner court disciples couldn't help but emit a wave of laughter. They deeply agreed with what Duan Lingtian said now. If you don't dare, then you don't dare. You're still speaking in such a dignified manner. Do you, Fanjian, really think that the senior brothers present are unable to discern your cowardice and weakness? Laughable. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth curled into a mocking smile, and his words were sharp. Duan Lingtian, looks like you don't dare accept Big Brother Lu's life and death arena agreement. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.